Eskom anything that's asking from them. Load shedding is intentionally man-made to justify certain agendas and sinister plans because some people benefit out of the man-made load shedding, says commenter Mamuli Balunga Kazwani from Mpumalanga, Elequatini, Ramburg. And that is where we ended. From the team this morning, Tracy Boomgart, Tizunga Namanashe, and Tapelo Sibanyoni, and Marubu Kakana. Our technical producer is Mark Prella, and our executive producers, I'm Elvis President. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
Top stories at 6, a ruling expected on Zuma's private prosecution case, and a call for calm amid reports of a planned shutdown in the northwest. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to rule on whether the former President Jacob Zuma's case to privately prosecute advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Maughan should be struck off the roll or postponed yet again. Zuma has accused Downer, who is the lead prosecutor in his arms deal, of the corruption case and Maughan of illegally leaking a doctor's letter to the media. Last year, the matter was remanded while Zuma was appealing 2 court orders Downer and Maughan had obtained to stop the case. Dries Liebenberg reports.
Former President Jacob Zuma has lost appeals against the enforcement order in both the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Constitutional Court. However, his legal team says they still intend to go to the Constitutional Court to appeal the order that the private prosecution is invalid. Advocate Ngaba Buthelezi for Zuma has asked for a further postponement. However, Maughan's advocate Ben Winks has told the court that the private prosecution has come to the end of the road and must be struck off the roll. I am Dries Liebenberg for SABC News in Durban.
The Northwest Government has called for calm among residents of Mahikeng and surrounding areas following reports of a planned shutdown today. Information has been circulating on social media requesting residents to shut down all entrances to the town in protest of poor service delivery. The provincial government's Brian Sitsobong says the organisers of the shutdown have not applied for permission from the police.
While the provincial government respects the rights of any person to march and protest about any grievance, it maintains this should be done within the confines of the law. The provincial government wishes to assure residents that measures have been put in place to ensure that the rule of law is enforced and that the safety of residents is prioritized. Public servants are also urged to treat this as a normal working day.
Political analyst Professor Bheki Ngomezulu has cautioned political leaders, especially in KZN, to be mindful of their words and actions. The province, which is hotly contested, has a history of political intolerance. Ngomezulu says with every party eyeing the province, there are fears that the competition could stoke tensions between political parties. He's urged parties to encourage their members to be tolerant and to avoid bloodshed.
Politicians have to refrain from inciting violence unnecessarily, either through what they say or what they do. Secondly, their followers or members of the public should also refrain from inciting violence because one incident could in fact lead to an unacceptable situation whereby lives will be lost.
More than 38 political parties in the Northwest have signed the Electoral Commission's Code of Conduct at a ceremony in Mahikeng. The Commission, which is preparing for next month's elections, has organised ceremonies in which parties will sign the Code of Conduct across the country. Some political party leaders have described the signing ceremony as a significant moment.
All the parties present here, they've went through the pledge, the code of conduct. Now they know what is expected from them.
This means that we must be welcomed in each and every area. There must never be a no-go area. The issue of defacing of posters of political parties must be a thing of the end.
We are very glad that this process was very fair and open to the community.
And lastly, looking further afield, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has called on all involved parties to urgently address an increasingly acute human rights and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He says the parties should also help to stop rising violence in the occupied West Bank. The BBC's Warren Paul reports.
Turk said Israel continued to impose what he called unlawful restrictions on the distribution of aid to Gaza, something the Israeli government denies. Mr. Turk repeated calls for an immediate ceasefire and the release of all Israeli and Palestinian hostages. The UN agency also called for Israeli security forces to immediately stop supporting settler attacks on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli military says it's investigating an incident on Monday in which 2 Palestinian youths were reportedly shot dead by settlers near Nablus, with IDF soldiers in the area accused of failing to intervene.
Recapping the top story at 6, the High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to rule on whether the former President Jacob Zuma's case to privately prosecute advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Warren should be struck off the roll or postponed yet again. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. Good morning. I'm Eva Chipa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, cricket, the Proteas women's captain Laura Wolfhard rises in the ODI ranks, while in rugby, the Bulls are bracing for Munster without their number 8 Cameron Honeycomb. Full stories and more just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And from the traffic desk, some early morning protests south of Pietermaritzburg. It's the R56. It's the road between Pietermaritzburg and Thornville. There already is some queuing pressure in that area. Expect a morning of delays and possible diversions, burning tyres. Just sort of closer to Thornville than Pietermaritzburg, but it is that 56 straight through route between Richmond and Pietermaritzburg will be disrupted this morning. We're also watching a large fire that's been on the go all night last night from yesterday afternoon, burning just north of the Huguenot Tunnel. So between the tunnel and Rawsonville on the N1, the road is open, but there's the possibility of some smoke disruption and also fire brigade vehicles in the area as well. Just proceed with care and caution on that section of the N1. Quite a big fire raging in the mountains just north of the N1. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Nice to have you along with us this Wednesday morning, getting into the week, getting things going. It's one of those days, and I'll probably be more excited about this tomorrow than I am now, but small things excite me. I've reached the end of a notebook. You know, that last page of a notebook which you don't really care for because it's sort of just not very nice to press on, and you get the sense that tomorrow, after I've spent about 22 Rand, I'll be able to use a nice new shiny notebook. So, you know, small things to look forward to. I was looking at sort of WhatsApp yesterday, and you know how things that happen in a faraway place can have a really big impact on you. And someone said, by the way, it looks like the El Nino is over. And I was like, what do you mean? And you go to, of all places, the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So they're weather experts, they're weather service in Australia, and they monitor the temperature of the top, the sort of upper level, the surface temperature of the Pacific Ocean. And from that measurement, you can tell whether it's still El Nino, whether it'll be La Nina, or what they call neutral. And they say it is neutral. And what does that mean for you? I mean, does it really matter for you what the water temperature for people on Australian beaches is? Does, actually, because that means that if El Nino is over, the period of very hot weather, very dry weather that we've seen may be coming to an end too. And we'll have what you would call a sort of average rainfall in the winter and the summer months. Now, if you look at the last little while, how we've had sort of quite a dry summer in some places, particularly in the maize belt, we've been talking about that recently. And if you look at the La Nina we've had, where we've had all of these very heavy rains over the last 3 sort of summer rainy seasons in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, well then, maybe all of that's coming to an end and we'll have a sort of more neutral year. But early to say in some ways, and there are all sorts of arguments and understandings and debates around climatology and how important I think it's called the La Nina, El Nino oscillation or something like that is. Either way, it was one of those things that sort of cheered me up yesterday to see that. I've been thinking a little bit about where we are in the elections, and it seems to me that there's no sort of single big issue that we're all talking about yet. I mean, this could change, and we're still obviously 5-6 weeks out. But it seemed to me a little surprising. I thought by now we might maybe have the 2 or 3 big issues that we'll be talking about, and we aren't. There isn't a sort of big fight. And I wondered if maybe that's because we're still sort of waiting to see what will happen about former President Jacob Zuma, and in a way he's been so far the issue of the elections, and there's no clarity yet on whether he'll be a candidate for Mkhonto weSizwe, but we wait for the Constitutional Court to decide if it'll hear the Electoral Commission's request for clarity on that decision after the Electoral Court ruling last week. I must just say there are some updates on all of this. The IEC had a briefing yesterday, and they say that MK has told the IEC that it has formally changed its party leader. So Jacob Zuma is the leader of MK, and as a result of that, he will now be the face on the ballot for MK. So whether he's a candidate or not doesn't affect that. There is a difference there. But what that means is that if you are voting for MK, Zuma's face is the one to look for. If you're voting for the DA, it's John Steenhuisen, for the IFP, Velenkosini Hlabisa, President Cyril Ramaphosa for the ANC, etc. So now that's sort of been sorted out, and we wait to see what the Constitutional Court will decide, and I think we're still waiting as well for the reasons for the Electoral Court decision. I think those might come maybe today, but at some point. Velenkosini Hlabisa, the leader of the IFP, he was talking yesterday at the Cape Town Press Club. He says that they don't believe they'll lose votes to MK. He says only disgruntled ANC voters will go to MK. Also preparing for coalitions, but he said it would be hard to work with the ANC. He was quite sort of angry at the ANC, saying you can't work with people. I think the way he put it was sort of destroying the country. So quite a big thing to say, I thought. But he said that they are preparing to work in coalitions after the elections next year. The Patriotic Alliance, Gayton McKenzie, he's been busy in the Western Cape. They've received a sort of pledges of support from 5 smaller parties who are not contesting the elections. He also said the DA would fall to below 40% in the Western Cape. Now, no poll has said that, so I don't know what he's basing that on. I have seen polls that suggest the DA will fall below 50% in the Western Cape, but he says below 40%. I don't know where that would come from. It's been interesting to see what the IEC has been saying about the various parties. So there are going to be 52 parties on the national ballot. I mean, 52. And many of them, I'm afraid to say this, you probably won't have heard of. By the way, this happens in many countries. You know, you'll have a few big parties, and then you'll have the sort of 2, 3, 4 parties that get the majority of support. Women are only 40% of the candidates. But did you know that women are the majority of voters? Over 50% of registered voters are women. And may I just say this, and I've said this to you before, that I know, and the team knows, and people who listen to us know, that by far the vast majority of people who call in to us and to the radio station as a whole are men. And it would be really nice to hear from more women. It really would. It's one of the big problems that I think talk radio generally has around the world. And I say I can't speak for the management of SAFM. I don't have that mandate. But I can speak, I think, for myself and for SAFM Sunrise when I say it would be really good if we could please hear the voices of more women calling in. And there's a really interesting thing in society. We had a mediator conversation about it once. If you look at the letters sections and the comment sections on websites, it's only men. And I don't know why that is. But it would really be good if we could redress the balance, please. So it's an appeal from me to you. If you are a woman, to call in. We want to hear your voice. I was talking yesterday about the situation in Gauteng, where 2 young learners, both boys, I think, in the Centurion area, had died during an excursion. And we don't yet have the full details about exactly what happened. They were at the Davyton Skills School. I know Matoma Chilwane, the MEC for Education in Gauteng, he'll be going there today. But from one of the accounts of what happened, is that everyone was preparing to sort of leave this excursion. It was near a river. And one of the boys suddenly ran towards the river. And then another boy, one was 13, I think, one was 16, chased after him to sort of bring him back. And the first boy then jumped in the river. And the second boy jumped after him to look after him. And that's unfortunately when they both drowned. And that might change the sort of indication we had. So I don't think this was during a formal activity. It would seem that one just ran and jumped in, and the other one followed him to try and sort of save him. So, I mean, there'll be a bigger story about this, I think. Koleka, there's a report in News 24 this morning. She, of course, is the public protector, and she's responded to the EFF MP, Busisiwe Mkhabane's, the former public protector's request to be paid this gratuity of 10 million million rand. And Xeleka says that Mkhwebane cost the Office of the Public Protector 160 million rand in sort of frivolous legal expenditure. She said she kept asking for delays. She defended orders that could not be defended, things like that. And she's saying really she's left the Public Protector's office in dire financial state. So she can't ask for this money now. She also says that even if she had finished her term, maybe she would be entitled to the gratuity, but she didn't. She was actually removed, and therefore she's not entitled to the gratuity. And Mkhwebane says that she's battling to make ends meet because she didn't receive the 10 million rand gratuity that people get at the end of office. But the gratuity, as I understand it, is dependent on completing your term in office. And then new driver's license cards. And to see what Chakunga Elvis was talking about this, the minister said yesterday that they're sort of waiting for the new machine, and the people have had to go to France to see the machine operating for themselves. Well, I don't know. Couldn't they send a video? Anyway, surely we're going to have more than one machine. There's got to be a better way to do this. And I don't yet know if there'll be absolute clarity on only having to renew your driver's license every 10 years, because that would really reduce the pressure. But I just think people just don't drive around with driver's licenses half the time. I mean, I remember going through a phase like that simply because it didn't arrive in time, you know. And you go to the office to go and get it, and there's just this pile of things. It isn't even done alphabetically, which I couldn't believe. Anyway, good to hear from you this morning. 086 000 2032. Yes, miss 41391. Tweet us FM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's 16 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
At the news desk this morning, Eva Cheaper. Eva, it's been, years. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Nervous to be back, but I'm okay.
Well, sounding great so far. What's coming up today?
Thank you. So today it looks like it's going to be a very busy news day. We start in KZN, where the High Court in Pietermaritzburg is expected to rule on whether former President Jacob Zuma's case to privately prosecute advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Warren should be struck off the roll or postponed yet again. So last year the matter was remanded while Zuma was appealing two court orders from Downer and Warren, which they had obtained to stop the case. So we're keeping a close eye on that. In another court case, a cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in possession of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder case. This trial is going to resume this morning at the Pretoria High Court.
And we've seen, sorry to interrupt you, We've seen in the past how important this cell phone evidence can be and who gets linked to what. And so, you know, I think they spent hours the other day sort of arguing about where the cell phone came from and whether it was stolen from a cell and taken from a cell, rather. Let's see what comes out in that.
Hopefully there'll be a bit more progress. And as you mentioned earlier, the Gauteng Education MEC, Matome Chelwane, will this morning visit Davidton Skills School in Benoni, east of Johannesburg. This is after the two learners drowned in the Hinops River near Centurion. As you mentioned earlier, one boy was trying to save the other and unfortunately both passed.
Terrible, terrible story. I can't imagine the parents.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And lastly, authorities in the northwest are calling for calm among residents of Mahikeng and surrounding areas following reports of a planned shutdown today. I'm not sure if you've gotten one of those voice notes. I randomly did, and I'm like, I don't even live there, so I don't know how I'm going to get involved. But information has been circulating on social media requesting residents to shut down all entrances to the town in protest of poor service delivery. So at this moment, we don't have clarity if the protest will still occur, but we'll keep a close eye on it.
Eva, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk again. Eva Cheaper at the news desk this morning, 18 minutes after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 12 and 22. Johannesburg, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers 10 and 20. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 10 and 21. Bombela, cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy 15 and 22. Polokwane, partly cloudy 12 and 21. Mahikeng, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 12 and 23. Vryburg, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers 14 and 24. Mangaung, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers 12 and 20. Kimberley, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers 12 and 23. Uppington, partly cloudy 17 and 30. Cape Town, morning and evening fog patches, otherwise fine, a light northwesterly wind in the morning, otherwise a moderate southeasterly. The temperatures 15 and 23. George, fine, becoming cloudy, fog patches from the late afternoon, a light and variable wind 13 and 27. Gqeberha, partly cloudy at first, otherwise fine, a light northeasterly wind 14 and 28. East London, fine, a moderate northeasterly 18 and 28. eThekwini partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh northeasterly 20 and 27. Richards Bay partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh northeasterly 17 and 29. And Pietermaritzburg morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, isolated afternoon showers and thunder showers 13 and 26.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for a 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial *120 *332 to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC1.
For the first time in 30 years, the ANC is set to lose its majority. Opposition parties have united as the multi-party charter for South Africa.
A strong democratic alliance with a proven track record
Can anchor a new government that serves the people.
But a new government that works is only possible if you vote for it. Let's unite and rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Genau Varashe Marumo, one of your KNR presenters. If you're interested in anything sport, entertainment, and education, make sure you tune in to Kids Newsroom right here on SABC2 every Monday at 4:30 p.m. You don't want to miss it.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
22 minutes after 6, good morning. In the Philippines, the president there, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has said he does not plan to allow the U.S. to build any more bases or camps on the country's territory. But he's also disputed claims by China that his government had agreed to remove an old Filipino Navy vessel that currently serves as the last part or the outermost part of its territory in the South China Sea. The U.S. has been building up its alliances with countries in Asia as a counterweight to China. Chinese vessels have, come close to attacking Filipino vessels in the last few years, using lasers and water sprayers or water cannon to try and push them away from areas that China says belongs to its territory. The US and the Philippines have a mutual defense agreement going back to the 1950s. Dr. David Munyai is the director at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. Munyai, good morning.
Good morning.
How important is the Philippines to the U.S. in the Pacific? I mean, their relationship goes back a long way, and the Philippines, of course, was an American colony, we often forget.
Oh, indeed. I think the relationship is quite strong, even though I think domestically within Philippines, they remain issues of colonial in nature. And therefore, I think under this administration, the new president seems to be leaning more to Washington than to Beijing. But it constantly changes. And the previous president had a different approach to issues of security and economic investments.
I suppose for people in the Philippines, I've never been there, so I can't speak for them, but on the one side, they don't want to be dominated by the US, but they don't want to be dominated by China either. Is that their sort of problem?
Oh, indeed. I think those sentiments are quite strong. However, I think there's also dispute among politicians that tend to see Marcus' moves as a way of regaining resources that his family lost, more than 600 million. That is in the banks in the Western world, more so in the United States. And therefore, the move going closer to the United States is seen as a personal move rather than national. And other factors are at play, the need for investments, the need for security, and so forth.
We see these incidents, they happen almost sort of semi-regularly where the Philippines will say China attacks its ships. So what happens is it'll be the Chinese Coast Guard. I don't think it's been Chinese naval ships. It may have been, but I don't think so. What they'll do is they'll go up to a Filipino vessel in some parts of the South China Sea. They'll use a sort of water cannon or a laser. They'll try and basically force the ship from the Philippines out of the area. Why does China try and do that?
I think China is taking a quite strong stance in terms of protecting what it perceives as its territorial zone. Half of the entire South China Sea is claimed by China, and however, there are 4 other countries that are also claim part of South China. These are Malaysia, Brunei, Vietnam, and Philippines. And those 4 countries are all taking different approach in terms of how to handle China over these issues. So Philippines stands out as a country that is dragging yet another hegemon, bringing in as a way of balancing and get protection. Whether that works or not, there are a lot of debates around it. However, we should also see this within increasing geopolitics, that the United States is moving its assets around China for so many other reasons, to its own national interest, not necessarily Philippines' interest.
Sure. The network of alliances that the US has been building in Asia, there's been more movement on that in the last sort of 10 days. Is it working? Does it limit China?
It brings it and increases the chances of accidental war. I think you have Taiwan. I think the world is looking at Taiwan as possible spark in terms of conflict. I'm increasingly worried more that Philippines might be, given the U.S. hard stand that is taking, not only bringing in Philippines, is also bringing in Japan. So this brings dynamics, given the role that Japan played during the Second World War. South Korea does not agree with Japan. So a lot of dynamics, and therefore the spark could come from any angle at any given moment. And Philippines is an area to look at for a possible conflict, in my own view, than Taiwan, that the world seems to be focused on.
Dr. David Munyai, thank you, Director at the Centre for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Morning.
Everyone's talking about Laura Wolfhard this morning.
Yeah, a high-five moment there for SA Cricket. The South Africa captain moving up to the top 5 of the ICC Women's ODI batting rankings. And this after helping her team to a 7-wicket victory over Sri Lanka in the second match of the ICC Women's Championship Series in Kimberley. Now, Wolfhard, who scored 41 in the first match, that ended in a no result, and that was due to rain, and 110 not out in the second match, has overtaken Australia's Elise Perry to 5th position. Now in the ODI rankings as well, Marizanne Kapp and Ayabonga Kaka, they've moved up a place each to 3rd and 7th positions respectively. The Proteas women will take on the Sri Lankan women's team in the 3rd ODI today from 2 p.m. More cricket action. Jos Buttler hit 107 not out to lead the Rajasthan Royals to a final ball win in pursuit of 224 against the Kolkata Knight Riders. He faced every ball in the last 3 overs and scored the single needed from the last ball to seal a 2-wicket win. The Royals' chase was the joint highest in the Indian Premier League and puts Butler's Royals top of the table. Rugby news, the Bulls will be without number 8 Cameron Honeycomb for a clash against Munster at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday for a dangerous hit in the Champions Cup. The EPCR received a citing complaint against the loose forward after a heavy defeat by the Northampton Saints for the Bulls in the quarterfinals at Franklin's Gardens last week. Honeycomb is alleged to have dangerously tackled Saints inside centre Fraser Dingwall in the 49th minute of the match in contravention of law 9.18. He was subsequently yellow carded by referee Matthew Reynolds. Soccer action, Borussia Dortmund stormed into the Champions League semi-finals with a 4-2 home win over Atletico Madrid that saw them fight back from a 2-1 defeat in the first leg to win the tie 5-4 on aggregate. And Kylian Mbappe inspired Paris Saint-Germain to a 4-1 second leg victory, winning 6-4 on aggregate, where they'll face Borussia Dortmund for a place in the Wembley final. And finally, tennis news, Rafa Nadal enjoying a winning start at Barcelona. He returned from another long-term injury. The Spanish 22-time major champion, who turns 38 in June, won 6-2, 6-3 against experienced Italian Flavio Cobolli in the first round.
Yeah, I tried a lot of times in my career. It's true that every time is more difficult, and especially when you are in advanced age, it makes the things even tougher. No, but yeah, I am going through tough moments, but at the same time, when I am able to be on the tour for a few days and practice with the guys, and then be able to compete a little bit, it means a lot to me, and still enough enjoyable to keep doing.
More sport on Sunrise, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You with SFM leading the conversation. We'll have more on the situation around water in eThekwini in the next half hour at 6:30.
In your news making headlines, a cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in possession of one of the accused in the Senzomayo murder case when the trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana captain in October 2014. In other news, the High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to rule on whether the former President Jacob Zuma's case to privately prosecute advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Warne should be struck off the roll or postponed yet again. Zuma has accused Downer, who is the lead prosecutor in his arms deal corruption case, and Warne of illegally leaking a doctor's letter to the media. And lastly, political analyst Professor Bheki Ngomezulu has cautioned political leaders, especially in KZN, to be mindful of their words and actions. I'll be back at 7 with more on these and other stories. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, another morning and another crash on Pretoria's N1 South. This one just before Rigel Avenue. Traffic's heavily back through towards the Linwood Road and working back towards the N4. So super heavy backlogs. N1 South into that crash. The right lane is closed. Between Castfontein and Rigel Avenue. Joburg side this morning, not a bad start. Don't forget the roadworks coming out of Soweto, though, on the N1 North up towards Albertina, Sisulu. That traffic on the way towards Randburg already queuing up. 3-vehicle crash just north of Durban in the Phoenix area. It's the R102 at JG Champion, also known as the Palm View traffic light. So both of those routes are under some pressure into that one. Misty conditions this morning. Cato Ridge through Pietermaritzburg along the N3 corridor, so drive carefully, please. And Cape Town, just watch for quite a big fire that's been burning in the mountains just north of the Huguenot Tunnel. So between the tunnel and Rawsonville along the N1 corridor, there may well be some smoke, and there's obviously some fire tenders going to and from that scene as well. And just into Cape Town, fairly busy this morning on the highways, no major obstructions, but the N1 already loading up between Belleville and the Kubo interchange, and the R300 queuing out of Mitchell's Plain, delays down towards the M7 Jakes Curvell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
With Intauleng Lachele. Intauleng, good morning. How are you this fine Wednesday morning?
Morning, Stephen. I'm good, thanks. I hope you're good.
All right. Asian markets, US markets, how's it all looking?
Well, the sell-off we've been seeing over the past few days is cooling off. We saw Wall Street stocks close the day mixed, with the Dow Jones the only index in the green. Traders on that front have been digesting a mixed bag of earnings, tensions playing out in the Middle East, and comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell. We're seeing a similar trend play out in Asia this morning. Caution prevails, but traders are somewhat slowly dipping their fingers back into those riskier assets. On that end, market markets are also keeping an eye out for trade data from Singapore and Japan. Back at home, however, local markets took a beating yesterday with the JSE in the red. The all-share lost up over 2%, and the Resources 10 complex taking the biggest knock, plunging 3.5%. The rand, in the meantime, trading weaker against major global currency pairs. It's still sitting above that 19 rand mark to the dollar.
And then the US is going to slap Iran with sanctions after those attacks on Israel. I mean, everyone's waiting to see what happens next, aren't they?
Right, we've had the U.S. Fire back at Iran. It's warning of those new economic sanctions. The nation's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was caught at the sidelines of the IMF launch of their World Economic Report, where she said her department and its allies, including the EU, are working on sanctions. Before this incident, the U.S. had already imposed sanctions on Iran for its connections to terrorism and for the country's missile program. But it seems like this time around, it's looking at Iran's oil markets, looking at how it can prevent growth in Iran's oil market in particular. Yellen says the sanctions will be released in the coming days, so we'll be keeping an eye out for that.
And then the IMF, their World Outlook report, they've upped their global growth forecast. They say we won't have a very hard landing, but they've cut our sort of a forecast for growth in the midterm.
Yeah, so it's lifted its global growth for the year by 0.1 percentage points to 3.2%. Not much, but I guess some sort of positivity is always welcomed. It, however, left the outlook for 2025 unchanged at 3.2% as well. The body, in the meantime, is less optimistic when it comes to emerging markets, cutting South Africa's growth for 2024 to 0.9%. It's pointed to inflationary factors and the usuals, load shedding, ports issues at Transnet, as well as water supply disruptions. On the global front, the IMF has warned of the following downside risks: new price spikes stemming from geopolitical tensions, including those from the Ukraine crisis, as well as the Middle East conflict. It's also pointed to persistent core inflation, saying that these factors could raise interest rate expectations and reduce asset prices.
And Taoleng, thank you. And Taoleng Lechela back with us in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, over refreshing morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
President Cyril Ramaphosa in South Sudan. Is it a 3-day visit?
Stephen, it is the 3-day visit coming from Kampala. Very important that South Africa is also the chair of the AU High-Level Ad Hoc Committee for South Sudan to assist Sudan in terms of its transitional process. So he'll be meeting with the Electoral Commission of the South Sudan in terms of the update on the upcoming elections. And also what is important is to enhance bilateral relations between Tshwane and Juba, hence the visit of President Ramaphosa in South Sudan yesterday until, Stephen, on Thursday, probably on Thursday and Friday, will be back in South Africa.
And then in Ethiopia, the government of Ethiopia and international partners, they're meeting in Geneva, looking to get a humanitarian response plan going.
Stephen, there are challenges in Ethiopia. They are now heading towards what they will call their peak of July-September season, where there's issue of food insecurity, the malnutrition in the Afara, Amara, and the Tigray region. Now, there have been this humanitarian conference that has been called in Geneva between the government of Ethiopia and the United Kingdom, as well as the United Nations, to look at the humanitarian response plan, which also is costed at almost 3.2 billion to assist the people of Ethiopia. This is a serious crisis, Stephen, considering the conflicts that have been in the Tigray region, the conflicts in the Amara region and the Afara region, and at the same time, the issue of El Nino droughts that are facing the Horn of Africa. Now, Ethiopia is having this international global conference just to seek more humanitarian aid from United Nations.
And then Somalia's finance minister, Bihi Iman Seche, in Washington, D.C. at the moment.
He's at Washington, Stephen. It means that the IMF and the World Bank is calling most of the East African countries. Now, remember that Somalia has to solidify its financial reforms, its strategy on what they call the post-debt relief. Now, the Minister of Finance, Iman, is in Washington to engage. This is an annual conference that happens within the IMF and the World Bank to look at different member states in terms of assisting them on their debts, on their economy. Hence, we find Somalia is also attending this important conference in Washington.
And then in Kenya, what's happening there? They've rejected the nomination of someone as a consular general for Goma in the DRC.
Stephen, to be an ambassador, there's knowledge that you need. So once you lack knowledge, you are not prepared. Carlos Ginjukiru was nominated as a consular general for Goma, and that is in the Eastern DRC. Now, it was rejected by other members of parliament, raising that issue of lack of knowledge on his duty station. The issue of understanding political and economic diplomacy, cultural diplomacy is very important, Stephen. It's not just to be nominated, just to be an ambassador. Very important that in Kenya, they do screen, and this is from the Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations that is rejecting most of the ambassadors that have been fronted by Ruto's party.
And then in our archives, you're looking at this day. It's a very interesting one you've picked, 17th of April, 1980.
It's almost 44 years ago, Stephen. Both Zimbabwe and South Africa used the Union of Jack as their flag, but on this day, it was lowered for the last time in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe was renamed from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe. And the lowering of this, Stephen, symbolizes the era of Robert Mugabe on the 18th of April, 1980. Just after today, as I said, it was the end of the road for the Union Jack in Zimbabwe. Asante Sana SG, those are still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Freedom Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Montula, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Back, of course, tomorrow morning is from our continent through the day. 20 minutes now after 7 o'clock.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, good to hear from you this morning. All sorts of questions around the elections. I don't know yet if we have one or two or three big issues for these elections. I mean, you may have a different view. You tell me, what do you think is sort of the big issue? 086 000 2032. People talking about coalitions, the huge number of new parties that we see on the ballot as well. And then also this issue around the new driver's license card. You know, I just kind of get the sense that, you know, it's time really to have some sort of electronic system. I know people have said there should be a way to do it on your phone, and I'm sure there is, that you wouldn't need to carry a card around with you. You'd basically be able to show it to an officer on your phone. And just a reminder that the driver's license does not expire, only the card expires, and all the card does is give you proof that you actually have a driver's license. Voice notes coming through this morning on 0614 104 107 on various issues, including on that horrific drowning of those two children in Gauteng.
Steve Oshonia from a Chile Centurion. It's quite tragic about those two boys that drowned in the Henops on the weekend. But the sad thing is, and the reality is, because I live here, is if they hadn't drowned from the river, the pollution in that river would have killed them. That's disgusting. We have a joke already here in Centurion that we say the mighty Henops. And we're actually thankful when it floods because it takes the smell of that river away for a while. Anyway, have a fantastic morning.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. All right, pollution in the Henops. I wasn't aware of that. Bramoro on the line from Mangung. Bramoro, hi. You want to talk about home affairs? Good morning.
Yes, good morning, sir. How are you and the team?
I'm well. Go for it.
Yeah, what will happen if Home Affairs decide to run a 24-hour shift service, whereby, especially the immigration section, you know, we are always talking about backlog of application of visas. Some are waiting almost 5 years now. To date, Home Affairs is unable to find solution to that. The ex-president of Ghana, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, is introducing a 24-hour economy that he intends to run Ghana if he is elected December 7th this year. So my question is, would it not be appropriate if Home Affairs decide to tap into that, whereby we have a 3-shift system, i.e., we have 3 workers who are working. One comes in the morning, maybe in the morning 8 a.m., and then around 3 p.m., that person knock out. Then a different person takes over from 3 p.m. until probably 10 p.m. Then another one takes over 10 p.m. until the next morning. Steve, within a month, let's check how many backlog applications that can be either approved or rejected from this system. Honestly, we'll be creating more employment, whereas reducing the traffic of illegal migrants in the country. There are some of us who arrive in the country, we put in our application, but because Home Affairs is unable to respond in time, we ended up vacating from the country whilst we were not even willing to do so. You speak to the hospitality industry, they all cry over all these problems that we are all witnessing. So please, put this proposal in front of the Home Affairs. What if they decide to run 24-hour shift system?
No, all right, Bramoro, thank you. I mean, I know there have been talks also. I mean, not all of our border posts are 24 hours, and I always find that sort of quite interesting when you consider how the world has changed. Bramoro and Mangong, thank you. I think there are lots of questions around Home Affairs at the moment, and I always make this point. I know the Minister and I, we haven't seen each other for a very long time, but people always presume that we both bring our boxing gloves. I don't think we plan to. But one of the problems and one of the reasons why it's such a difficult job, and I have sympathy for the Minister and the people in Home Affairs, is you're trying to apply the law to human beings. And human beings surprise you. You don't know what they're going to do. And that's one of the reasons you're trying to sort of, put laws around them. That's the department that does it. And that's one of the reasons it's so complicated. 16 minutes to 7.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
Well, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, I understand, has said he believes the eThekwini municipality has now ensured that 90% of the city is getting proper water. But residents in some areas say their problems have still not been resolved. There have been long-running problems in eThekwini. National government's also been meeting with the eThekwini administration as a sort of intervention. And in some places, people have told us in Inanda, for example, in some parts of Inanda, some people had water but haven't had water for periods of over a year. Alice Govender is the Deputy Chair of the Phoenix Civic and Ratepayers Association. Alice, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
What problems are your members having in that area around water?
The Phoenix area has been hard hit by the erratic water supply. We have our neighboring community that's now going 320 days without water. This is a human catastrophe on such a large scale. Despite numerous interventions and meetings with our local municipality, with Mr. Konda and his team, all we get are promises, but there's no delivery on those promises.
How big is the area without water? You talk about your community, you talk about the neighbouring community. I think the Deputy President believes 90% of the city has water. Is that true?
I'm going to disagree with that statement that Mr. Mashatile has made publicly, because I don't know where he gets these figures from. I don't know what he's being fed by eThekwini municipality. I don't know what the mayor and his delegation is telling the deputy president, because that's certainly not the case on the ground. Because if that was the case on the ground, you wouldn't see us protesting. You wouldn't see us constantly writing to the municipality, trying to engage with them, trying to get water tankers every day. Just yesterday, we were requesting water tankers, and we've been doing that from early in the morning, from about 6, 7 in the morning. The water only came at 7 p.m. in the evening. I mean, how does the city run itself?
I mean, is it true then there's some areas, you talk about the community next to you, for example, you have some areas that have been used to having water and some now that just haven't had proper water for months? I mean, is there any indication the municipality is trying to fix it? Do you know if they actually can fix it?
We've had various meetings and engagements with both municipality, eThekwini municipality, and including Mr. Senzo Mchunu, the National Minister of Water, who's been down to Durban recently and had meetings in both Verulam as well as in Phoenix, where he came and addressed the people, spoke about 69 valves that needed to be replaced. The valves were being replaced. Then the valves were replaced. Then it was, he gave a deadline date of the 15th of February, where there will be water running in our taps 24 hours a day, as if we've never had a problem. All of that has failed. They were also of great concern to ourselves as well as to other organizations that we partner with and are affiliated with, as that when we get this water running, he's going to come back and he's going to have another meeting, but it's going to be a good one. None of that's happened. And for me, what is really, really concerning is that all the efforts that Mr. Senzo Mchunu had put into place to ensure that the deadline of the 15th was met was reversed 2 days after he left KZN by eThekwini municipality. And I beg to ask the question, why did that happen? So when national government speaks to local government and then those decisions are reversed, one has to wonder what's going on here.
So there was a big meeting this week, I understand, between national government and the eThekwini administration. Do you think national government needs to intervene in a bigger way? And I put this to the minister before. He said that if it were up to him, he would like to see the national government having more powers in these situations. From where you sit, do you think that national government needs to just take over the water in eThekwini?
I believe that decision is long overdue and it should have been done months ago. eThekwini is an embattled municipality and we need to be put under administration. So I don't understand where all of this is coming from. I do not believe that his visit to Durban was based on his concern for the ratepayers and the constituents of this province. I don't believe that for one moment.
Alice Govender, thank you. The Deputy Chair of the Phoenix Civic and Ratepayers Association. Well, your view on that, and we've seen so many different water problems, more reports today about issues in Joburg and future issues that could happen. And how do we resolve all of this? 086 000 2032.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Oh, another heavy one as you come out of Pretoria on your way to Joburg via Midrand this morning. There's a crash causing quite a big delay. N1 South between Garsfontein and Rigel. The right lane is closed. Traffic's already parking back beyond Linwood Road, back towards the N4 split. So that's a very heavy queue. And then there's been a crash on the N1 South further down by Olifantsfontein Road. The left lane is closed, and that's pushing traffic all the way back towards Brockfontein interchange already. And of course, in the middle of those two queues, you've got the R21 queuing airport bound into the Clayville area, into the construction. The R21, just while we're talking about that, it's going to be closed this week on that section between Clayville and Irene. So between Nel Mapius Drive and Olifantsfontein this weekend coming. Full closure all day Saturday, 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. and then back for a second crack at it on Sunday from 6 a.m. until 12 noon. So major disruption this weekend for motorists that want to get particularly from Pretoria down towards the airport and those flight connections. You will encounter traffic on the alternative routes, and I would think during the closure the Clayville area as motorists work back onto the R21 or come off at the closure, that Clayville central area will at times be heavily congested. Roadworks on Joburg's N1 South leaving Soweto again this morning, holding you up towards the Maresburg exit. Durban side, a crash out at the Palm View traffic lights. That's JG Champion and the R102, 3 vehicles involved. Both routes are busy. Very slow on Fields Hill this morning, coming through Hillcrest into Kloof and onto the hill down towards Pinetown. Unusual backlogs there. Cape Town traffic all very busy, and it's busier earlier than what you might be expecting. No major obstructions on the highways, but the N1's from Belleville, N2 from the airport, the M5 already backing up from Kenilworth right through to Kuburg. Get a change in the M3 already formed up in a queue between Constantia and Paradise Road up in the Bishop's Court area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
For years, Outsurance has been saying they'll save you money on your car insurance, or you can ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand cash if they don't. Here's Fundi, 46 from Brackenfell.
I was not happy with what I was paying. I heard about the 500 Rand from Outsurance, but they give me lesser amount for my car. I'm paying 523 Rand on my 2013 Hyundai iX35.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
Give Outsurance a call. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history,
From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care. But more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Nna lebitso la ka ke Bonolo Moagi di Bantswang ba re ke Miss B, Morara Miss T, Moagi D, the Bonnie P Bonbon. And we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed, but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
6 minutes now to 7 the time. Residents in Hanover Park on the Western Cape say they are frustrated that the police minister, Bheki Cele, did not appear to understand how crime is ruining their lives and even preventing their children from going to school. The minister was in the area this week to meet residents. He's promised that at least 13 officers will be deployed to the area. Residents say there's simply never any police officers available to respond to crimes. Kashifa Mohammed is the spokesperson for the Hanover Park Community Policing Forum. Kashifa, good morning. Before we continue, I actually understand that someone in your family just in the last few hours has been a victim of crime. What happened?
Good morning, sir. You know, just 5 minutes ago, my brother-in-law and his wife was nearly hijacked in Philippines. 8 men surrounded their car, smashed their windows and wanted to stab him. And they were on their way to work. This is so a traumatizing thing that happened to them. They're not used to crime and not even violent person. People, why are people doing this? Why is crime happening so early in the morning? And the robot by Philippi is a hotspot for hijacking. Why doesn't police mobilize at that robot? This is not the first hijacking that's happening there at that robot.
Sure.
Why isn't police visible?
And Kashifa, are they okay?
They just managed to get away. My brother-in-law is in a very bad state. And he's a chronic person also. And I can't explain you because I'm also stressed out. It's a family member.
Oh, Kashifa, I'm so sorry. I mean, you're dealing with this. The minister was there just this week. Do you think he understands how serious things like this are?
I don't think the minister knows the seriousness of the crime of Hanover Park. Whatever the minister can do in Hanover Park was pathetic. He didn't even have answer for the people of Hanover Park. Our women and children is dying in Hanover Park. They don't see really the seriousness of this crime, where bullets every minute of the day, every minute of the night go off in a society like Hanover Park. You know, sir, our children can't even play outside. Our elderly people can't walk to a shopping mall. It's just bullets.
Sure.
And this is so sad.
Kashifa, the minister says there'll be new police officers, I think 13 new police officers. Will that make any difference?
You know, The say and the do is two different things, sir. The police and the minister must be kept accountable for all those murders that is happening in Hanover Park. The minute before he had to step down on Sunday evening in Hanover Park, he should have deployed forces. 5 hours after the minister spoke to our community, there was another murder. So what difference did that bring to the community of Hanover Park? Why come making empty promises to our community and don't implement forces into this community?
Do you believe the minister and the government want to actually fix the problems? I mean, you've had promises. We've spoken to you many times, Kashifa. I mean, do you believe the promises that are being made? Do you believe that people want to actually resolve it? Do you think maybe they actually don't know how to resolve it, and that's really the problem?
I don't think they know how to resolve this problem. Whether they're going to bring in how many forces into Hanover Park, they must bring in the real people into Hanover Park, and that is social development, educational department. They mustn't just come and make promises to our people, and this is more a political thing for our people to vote. It's more a voters thing that is going on here. Our people lost their trust in government, in all political parties in the Western Cape, because Hanover Park at this moment is a graveyard. Our children is dying here on the floor of Hanover Park. We even have a video where Ellen Regan come to Hanover Park, J.P. Smith, and doing a TikTok on the grounds where our children's blood is laying in Hanover Park.
Sure. Kashifa Mohammed, thank you. Strength to you and your family and your community after what happened this morning. The spokesperson for the Hanover Community Policing Forum. And just a reminder of, how serious crime is in our country at the moment. There's been such a big increase, of course, in violent crime in the last couple of years. And still, it seems, very few answers coming on how to counter it, all sorts of things that need to happen. We'll get an update for you on the situation regarding the flooding in Margate. Looks like that might be declared a national disaster or a provincial disaster of some kind, just to help people there. Your mediated conversation coming in a little while will be about property prices. People in the middle classes complain that their properties are not holding value in Gauteng. Soweto had its best year ever in property prices last year. You with SFM leading the conversation at 7 o'clock.
Top stories for this hour. The Senzo Meyiwa murder trial resumes this morning and a ruling expected on Zuma's private prosecution case. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. A cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in possession of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder case when the trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana captain in October 2014. The state has laid evidence on cell phones which were allegedly found in the possession of 2 of the accused while they were in custody. Lieutenant Colonel Gideon Groos explains.
In 2023-09, I was contacted. I said Colonel Stenenberg was contacted by Brigadier Kaninda from the cold case, and he directed me to assist Colonel Stein on the analysis of a downloaded phone on Vosloorus 636 of 10/2014. On 2023-09-06, I received a request form and a CD marked Vosloorus 636-11-2014 in a sealed forensic bag.
The High Court in Pietermaritzburg is today expected to rule on whether the former President Jacob Zuma's case to privately prosecute Advocate Billy Downer and journalist Karen Warren should be struck off the roll or postponed yet again. Zuma has accused Downer, who is the lead prosecutor in his arms deal corruption case, and Warren of illegally leaking a doctor's letter to the media. Last year, the matter was remanded while Zuma was appealing 2 court orders Downer and Warren had obtained to stop the case. Dries Liebenberg reports.
Former President Jacob Zuma has lost appeals against the enforcement order in both the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Constitutional Court. However, his legal team says they still intend to go to the Constitutional Court to appeal the order that the private prosecution is invalid. Advocate Ngaba Buthelezi for Zuma has asked for a further postponement. However, Mourn's advocate Ben Winks has told the court that the private prosecution has come to the end of the road and must be struck off the roll. I am Dries Liebenberg for SABC News in Durban.
Political analyst Professor Bekingome Zulu has cautioned political leaders, especially in KZN, to be mindful of their words and actions. The province, which is hotly contested, has a history of political intolerance. Ngome Zulu says with every party eyeing the province, there are fears that the competition could stoke tensions between political parties. He's urged parties to encourage their members to be tolerant and to avoid bloodshed.
Politicians have to refrain from inciting violence unnecessarily, either through what they say or what they do. Secondly, their followers or members of the public should also refrain from inciting violence, because one incident could in fact lead to an unacceptable situation whereby lives will be lost.
In other news, the animal welfare organization Four Paws South Africa says there are around 3,000 wild lions in the country. Four Paws is one of the stakeholders that hosted a panel of experts in a dialogue with the IFP in Parliament last night to discuss environmental issues. The Four Paws director in South Africa, Fiona Miles.
There's two different types of lions in South Africa. One is wild lions, and there's approximately 3,000 wild lions left in the wild spaces. But South Africa intensively breeds big cats, lions, leopards, tigers, and other big cats for commercial purposes. And commercial purposes include things like tourism activities like cuddling lion cubs, walking with lions, all the way through to trophy hunting of animals, harvesting of the bones for the international commercial trade in lion bone.
And lastly, the US says it will impose new sanctions on Iran in response to its unprecedented attack on Israel at the weekend. The US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says America expects its allies to follow suit. He says new sanctions will be put and will place pressure on Iran to contain and degrade its military capacity. Recapping the top story for this hour, a cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in the possession of one of the accused in the Senzo murder case. This is when the trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
My broadband. A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, plenty of action to look forward to. As we have Gavin Hunt, he is looking to bounce back, and that's a comeback for SuperSport United. And there's more action with Harry Kane eyeing the Champions League glory. Catch the full scoop just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The queue coming out of Soweto on the M1 towards Maritzburg is heavier than it normally is. There's roadworks, the right lane closed before Albertina Sisulu, and that traffic already starting to park back towards Rancho Road. So big traffic there. Breakdown coming out of Benoni on the N12 to watch for just after Tom Jones towards Atlas Road. That'll start to queue up. The N1 South coming out of Pretoria stays heavy this morning. A crash before Rigel. Traffic all the way back through towards the N4 Eminathleni Highway. If you're driving from Hillcrest, the M13 is a busy one into Kloof and then down Fields Hill. Looks like a problem before you get to Richmond Road. Another day, another breakdown on Durban's N2 South before Spaghetti Junction. Traffic parking back through to Inanda Road. That's probably the first of many breakdowns that we'll witness again today on that section. And Cape Town, we've been mentioning, it's just really busy. The highways, no major obstructions this morning, but they're all really busy heading through towards the central area, notably the M5, which is backed up from Ottery all the way through to the Kuba. Get a change. And Marine Drive already parking up from Bayside through to Racecourse Road, and then a second queue out of Milnerton into Pardon Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 7, good morning. You're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, lots more to come. We'll get an update for you on the situation around the flooding in Margate. That's been so difficult over the last little while. Also, you would have seen yesterday, heard in the bulletins, the DA very angry that Cuban doctors were being employed and paid for it appeared ahead of unemployed South African doctors. There's been a bit of an issue, the unemployed South African doctors, and doctors are unemployed really because the Department of Health doesn't have the money, and yet we're spending money on Cuban doctors, sort of goes the argument. Well, it would appear that some people are sort of saying leave the Cuban doctors alone, not their fault. We'll get an update for you on that. And then I'm looking forward to a conversation around property, and people talk about property all the time, even if you're not in the property market, and they talk about property all the time, really because it's a sort of dipstick, an indication of how people feel about the future and how they feel about the economy. And Soweto had its best year last year. And that's at a time when people are saying, no, the Gauteng property market is going down. So what's really going on in the property market? I think it could be quite an important conversation, a very interesting conversation. We'll take your calls as well on 086 000 2032. It's 8 after 7. Good morning.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get these. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray. Long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
I am Dion De Vos, the Executive Mayor of Sarah Baartman District Municipality, and I hereby invite you to comment on the draft Integrated Development Plan and Budget for 2024-2025. The draft IDP and budget are available at municipal offices in the 7 local municipalities of the district and on the municipality's website, sarahbartman.co.za. Comments should be sent via email to idp@sbdm.co.za. Comments close on 22nd April 2024.
In the heart of South Africa's coal-rich province in Mpumalanga, the Council for Geoscience pioneers the fight against climate change with the implementation of carbon capture, utilization and storage project. The CCUS technology captures carbon emissions at their source and securely stores them underground at carefully selected geological formations. This endeavour not only mitigates CO2 emissions but also supports vital coal-dependent industries for South Africa's development. Near Leandra, the CGS has identified a site that will pilot this project as one of the developmental imperatives towards achieving a low-carbon economy.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
11 after 7, good morning. In Margate on the KwaZulu-Natal south coast, people are still inspecting the damage and trying to clean up after the incredibly intense rain on Sunday night that claimed the lives of 5 people. The provincial government there and national government, I understand, are looking at declaring a state of disaster in that area. Some businesses, it seems almost literally washed away. One river in that area appears to have burst its banks. That means the water literally pushed its way to the sea. A car that was caught up in that torrent was washed away, killing 3 people who were in it. Another person was struck by lightning. Scott Kwalfsig is a member of the Drivers Community Initiative at Shelley Beach as part of the sort of Margate Tidy Towns project, someone who's been working in the area with communities. Scott, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners.
You've been trying to assess the damage in Margate. How bad is it?
The damage is absolutely catastrophic. The Kongweni River burst its banks after around 320 mils of rain was had in 2 hours in its catchment, washed away a church, washed away, I think, 40 cars, washed away huge portions of the road. huge infrastructure damage. I reckon it is running into the hundreds of millions of rands damage.
Are you saying 320 mils literally fell, or only in? I mean, that would be 3 meters of rain. Or,
Correct.
I mean, is that
Yes.
is that what the officials are saying?
Okay, that is what the farmers have got. That's what they measured with their very scientific measuring equipment that is in their banana plantations and in macadamia plantations. So it's a very accurate idea of how much rain fell between 8 o'clock Sunday night and 10 o'clock Sunday night.
I don't argue with farmers when it comes to rainfall. I mean, that's an incredible figure to have 3 meters of rain.
Yeah.
We've seen provincial government officials on the scene. Are you getting help from government, from officials, from the local government as well?
Yes, the local officials have been very helpful. They're out on the ground. They're assessing the damage. We've had various members of the community take drone footage of the damage that's occurred. Henrik Ludik from the helicopter 101 security was up with his helicopter, and he's taken brilliant footage, which the government officials have had sight of, and they are planning something or other to get everything fixed up. Mr. Keta Zulu phoned us last night and asked us as a Tidy Towns group to give him an estimation of what's required to fix up the damage on the beach fronts.
Do you think you need more help from national governments as well? I mean, do you think we're going to need that kind of resource? I know there's a discussion around possibly declaring what happened a disaster.
Most definitely. I think it is a disaster, and it's going to need quite a lot of funding to fix the problem up and make sure that this doesn't happen again. We need to fix the bridges correctly. The stormwater drainage through Margate needs urgent attention. There's a lot more development since that system was put into place. So all of this needs to be fixed.
I was going to ask if one of the reasons all of this happened was a lack of maintenance. But I have to say, if 3 meters of rain, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that, if 3 meters of rain falls in just, a few hours, I mean, you can prepare as much as you like. Things are still going to be washed away.
I think so, correct. I think you're very correct in that. But let's mitigate the damage in the future and put bigger infrastructure in place. We must understand there's been huge development in those areas, but the infrastructure stayed the same. So it needs to be improved and improved urgently. The South Coast is prone to very different and funny weather cycles and rain because we're so close to the sea. So this is going to continue happening. So we need to mitigate for that risk and get everything set up correctly.
Now, you talk about mitigating for the risk. I mean, for businesses now, they're going to have to prepare for this. They'll have to pay huge for insurance. I mean, things like that could suddenly just make it harder to run a business in Margate over the longer term.
Absolutely. There's some poor people who have lost everything in the flooding. They've lost their house, they've lost their businesses, the buildings have fallen down, businesses have collapsed, petrol stations have been underwater. No, it's a huge, huge problem.
Do you think businesses will be able to recover? I mean, there's a big community in Margate. You talk about the development there. More people have moved there. People need jobs as well. I mean, desperately in that part of KwaZulu-Natal. Do you think that sort of Margate's going to recover? I mean, it will be different, but do you think it will recover?
Oh, no, without definitely. This has happened in the past, and Margate has recovered. We've got Margate to Shelley Beach Tidy Towns organisation now that is working feverishly, repairing Margate Beach. We were on the beach last night with the volunteers and the team from Tidy Towns to Shelley Beach, Marcus, Red, Stephen, Chris, and Auntie Christelle, and various other members of the community. Farmers have taken their tractors down to the beach, business people, their TLBs, their tractors, their trailers, their dump trucks, and we've managed to clear Margate Beach. We've collected all the debris into piles. We've taken the tires off. We've leveled the entrance onto Margate Beach with heavy equipment. So another day, by lunchtime, people will be able to walk around safely on Margate Beach. So we're very proactive with the business community. and getting Margate back to where it should be as a premier coastal destination. What we must remember, Margate is the Eiffel Tower of the South Coast, and it's literally paradise. Margate is magic, is the common saying down in Margate.
All right, Scott, I know it's campaigning season. You often, your main job, as you say, is attracting tourists. I presume that's really, in a way, maybe your only sort of industry there. I mean, that's what you depend on.
I think you're correct. There is industry, there is subsidiary industry, there is farming, macadamia farming, banana farming, there is small industry, manufacturing, cement making stone. There is various small industries, but the tourism industry is by far the largest because of what we have to offer. We've got the sea, we've got the inland game reserves, game hikes, Orby Gorge Nature Reserve. So you've got a whole package for tourists. When they come down here, they can really come down and enjoy themselves. We've got a flight from Joburg to lands in Margate. So, and then let's face it, Margate on the South Coast is a beautiful place to come and bring your family on holiday.
Scott, thank you. Scott Kwelsig is a member of the community initiative, Drivers Community Initiative at Shelley Beach to Margate for the Tidy Towns organisation. They're still battling, of course, to recover from that flooding. 7:19.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Help us understand when there's been this hashtag World War III. Is that over speculative, over dramatic or not?
I think it is over dramatic. The attack by Iran of Israel over the weekend, it was an agreed move by Iran and the allies of Israel. Before Iran sent those 300 plus drones and missiles into Israel, it did forewarn the United States and some of the Western countries that it was going to do that because of two things. One is internal pressure that Iran faced after its embassy was attacked on the 1st of April by Israel. But two, Iran has got the right to defend itself. So this time around was the first time that it's done so. But it was very calculative, measured.
Tembisa Fakwede, speaking on behalf of his position as the Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues, AfriCID.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
7:20. A couple of you have got in touch very quickly just to correct my math. Sorry about this. I said that was 3 meters of rain. 300 millimeters isn't 3 meters of rain. Come on, Stephen. It's 30 centimeters of rain. My mistake. Sorry about that. In other news, the Electoral Commission says it's now ready to print the ballot papers for the elections. The final disputes over which parties have formally registered have been resolved, also confirming former President Jacob Zuma will be the face on the ballot paper from Sizwe, as MKF said that he is their leader. I must just say that's a different process to determining whether Zuma can be a candidate for Parliament in the elections. The Electoral Court has not yet given its reasons for its decision that Zuma can be a candidate. The IEC has said it will appeal that decision at the Constitutional Court because it needs clarity on the issue. Well, an important press conference from the IEC yesterday. Thought important to hear again from Ibrahim Fakir, a consultant election analyst at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. Ibrahim, good morning.
Hi, Stephen.
We've seen so many new political parties and parties that have never contested before. We're going to have longer ballots than we've ever had, more ballots than we've ever had in the national and provincial elections. Do you think any of these new parties are really going to make much of a difference? I don't want to accuse someone of sort of cluttering up a ballot paper. They have a democratic right to contest. It does mean a lot more work for the IEC.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, democracy is a lot of work. Democratic choice is a lot of work, and giving democratic voice is a lot of work. And we've got to protect that kind of environment to campaign to kind of the desire and, fulfill the aspiration of the desire to hold political office. So, I mean, it is what it is. If you meet the regulatory requirements, you register a party, you able to sort of get the required number of signatures if you're a new party to show that there is at least some level of support for your candidature and that you have all the identifying features and marks and you are able to pay the deposit which is required to contest, then you should be on the ballot paper. So I mean, yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, you've seen you've got such a great amount of fragmentation and so much inclusivity. But sometimes you've got to ask the question: at what point do you balance the inclusivity with the effectiveness, particularly with regard to oversight, extracting levels of accountability, refining policy, contributing to the public debate? I mean, if you really think about it. At the moment, you've got in the order of about 13, 14 political parties in parliament, right? Of that, about 9 political parties only represent about 10% of the electorate. 9 different political parties representing about 10% of the electorate. 3 or 4 parties represent close to 90% of the electorate. So, I mean, that itself should tell you a story. There's a great value to diversity, there's a great value to inclusivity, but there's a real downside to excessive fragmentation in the system. And that's one of the potential problems. But nevertheless, I mean, people, we got the system we have. People are entitled to contest. As you well know, in the context of coalitions, people believe that not to try and reduce the number, but to make things a little more manageable, we should introduce a threshold for parties and their representation in parliament. So they must meet a threshold of, say, 1% or 2%. In some countries, it can go up to 5% or even more of support in order to hold a seat. But we don't have that. So, the number of parties on the ballot papers, that's people who are aspiring to office, they're allowed to.
The IEC has to do more work than ever before, and it's not just because there are so many new parties, it's also because there are 3 ballot papers. There are also independent candidates. From what we can see, if this is sort of more work than ever before, I realise 1994 was a very different election and was probably more complex to administer just because so many other things were going on. But is the IEC sort of as ready as it can be for this election, considering how much of this election is actually new?
No, I mean, there's a real manifest danger that they're not, because to the extent that the system is pretty similar to what we've had, there are elements which are very new, and those very new elements require new regulatory regimes, new processes, new management systems, and so on. But this is not the fault of the IEC. Remember, the finalization of the new act subsequent to the 2020 Constitutional Court findings that independence must be accommodated in the system. The political parties in parliament and the parties which make up parliament dragged their feet for so long. They missed 3 deadlines. They literally only finalized some of the finer aspects of it about a month ago. So to think that the IEC would have had a major amount of time to prepare, I think is a bit. It's kind of expecting a little bit much. They tried to prepare as best they could with the administrative arrangements that they could put in place, not knowing some of the finer aspects of the system, but nevertheless it's now in place. One of the big things they weren't able to do is serious and significant outreach, public education in terms of the new system, in terms of the fact that there's 3 ballot papers now instead of 2, the split between regional seats and national compensatory seats, as they're calling it. Some of the terminology is becoming confusing to voters. And that actually does matter for an election, actually.
One of the key things in elections that we've come to learn, it hasn't been a big problem here, but it has been in other countries, is when there is a delay in announcing the results. And I've heard people who've worked in elections say, the big risk is when you have results coming in and then the results stop. And that's when people become suspicious. Now, that's never happened here. I don't think it will happen here. Where I'm going is in a different direction. If we have 3 ballot papers, a lot more votes to count and more parties, could it take a bit longer to get a result?
Theoretically, but I'm not really concerned that it would, because the counting system is going to be pretty similar. The fact that you've got additional parties, of course, affects voter choice. Might mean people take longer to find what they want on the ballot paper, but the counting, and it might have some impact on the counting, but it's not going to create such an extraordinary delay that the system and the calculation is so overwhelmingly complex that it's impossible to administer. Of course, there are going to be several rounds of calculation, particularly after you distribute the seats to the independents. A new quota for the number of votes required to hold a seat for parties will be required. So you'll have some recalculations going on, but to determine new quotas to hold seats for the distribution of them. But it won't be so long that it's going to delay the process inordinately. What will delay the process inordinately, and I suspect this is what might happen, is the kind of spurious objections. Making mountains out of molehills, kind of elevating administrative or logistical errors to being of high political import, declaring disputes, wanting recounts here, there, and everywhere, and so on. Those are the kinds of things which might delay it. But I think in terms of the actual process of counting, administering, tabulating, verifying results, it shouldn't be too different from previous elections, despite the complication that's now set in.
Ibrahim Fakir, thank you. An elections analyst, a consultant at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. 28 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Gavin Hunt wants to bounce back.
Yes, bouncing back indeed, especially after they lost. They had a drubbing 4-0 against Stellenbosch FC at the weekend. That was the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal. But now he's looking towards the DStv Premiership encounter, and that's their home fixture against Polokwane City. Hunt's side have managed just 2 wins in 10 games from all competitions, and the coach doesn't want to hide from the fact they've had a tough few weeks.
We've had a bit of a bad run the last game or two. I mean, even people can talk about the draws, but the draws are some of them. There's 3 away games you draw in, which you would take them at the start of the season where we played, but obviously we were leading in games, and where we played were tough games, I mean, we played Stellenbosch after the turn of the new year. We were 1-0 up, coasting. We should have made it 2-3. We had some big chances. They got an equaliser right at the end. So Cape Town City away. These games are tough. They're not going to be easy.
Meanwhile, Harry Kane is setting the stakes high for Bayern Munich as they gear up for their crucial Champions League clash against Arsenal tonight. With the quarterfinal tie poised at a knife's edge 2-2, Bayern Munich have been dethroned domestically. After a staggering 11-year Bundesliga reign, they're now channeling all their might into European glory. Here's Harry Kane.
We have a great opportunity tomorrow night in front of our fans to keep the season alive and keep some hope amongst the fans, and hope that we can achieve something special, even though it's not been the greatest season. So, for me personally, it's just about going there tomorrow and trying to do what I've been doing and scoring goals and help the team in any situation possible.
And cricket, South Africa's captain Laura Wolfart has moved into the top 5 of the ICC Women's ODI batting ranking. She's overtaken Australia's Elsa Perry to 5th position. In the ODI bowling rankings, Marizanne Kapp and Ayabonga Kaka have moved up a place, each to 3rd and 7th respectively. The Proteas will take on the Sri Lankan women in the 3rd ODI, first ball being bowled from 2 p.m. That's a wrap of your Sport on Sunrise. More for you, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll get another take on the Cuban doctors issue in the next few moments. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning, 7:30.
In news making headlines for this hour, police are patrolling the streets of Mahikeng in the northwest following reports of a possible protest over lack of basic services. The organisers of what is dubbed as the Save Mahikeng protest says the aim is to bring the town to a standstill. In other news, a cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in the possession of one of the accused in the Senzomuyo murder case when the trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain in October 2014. And lastly, Zambia has made an appeal to the international community for $900 million, or more than 17 billion rand, to deal with its worst drought on record. I'll be back at 8 with more news. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still extremely heavy on the M1 South coming out of Pretoria again this morning. A crash before Rigel Avenue. Traffic parking all the way back to the N4 Emma-Lefleni Highway. That's a heavy queue. If you're airport bound, you've got that queue to worry about coming out of Pretoria. And then you've got the secondary queue on the R21 approaching the Clayville area into the roadworks. So plenty of time required to get through that. Three big routes coming in from the south are jamming this morning. The N1 out of Soweto towards Maritzburg. That's roadworks. The Mike 1 from Boyston through to Parktown up to about Oxford Road looking very heavy. And the N3 from the N12 Elands interchange all the way up into Galooly is jam-packed as well today. Durban, the rundown Fields Hill, remaining busy rather than heavy. That's coming through Cluthian towards Pinetown. M7's bad into St John's Avenue Bridge territory. Backlogs from Hunt Stepman. And probably the first of many again today. We've got a breakdown on the N2 South going into Spaghetti Junction. It's in the roadwork, so you drop down a further lane, and that's pushing traffic back beyond Inanda Road and looking quite heavy as well. Cape Town, pretty busy. We were looking at general traffic flows around Cape Town and thinking, yeah, it is busier this morning than it normally is. Why would that be? It appears if it's quite a misty and sort of foggy bound morning for a lot of Cape Town traffic. So everything on a bit of a slow go because of some poor visibility across the city. So there are some areas where that fog is particularly heavy. There are other areas where where its conditions are clear. Just some of the highlights. The M5 coming in very heavy this morning from Southfield Parkwood all the way through to the Kuberg interchange. And there's some real pressure on the N7 north to Bosmansdown, southbound towards the N1 highway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
With Intaleng Lechela again. Intaleng, good morning. Asian markets, US futures, how's it all looking?
Well, we are seeing somewhat of a turnaround in market sentiment, with the Asian stocks reversing losses, moving in a flat to low range. This comes amid waning expectations for U.S. interest rate cuts. The Japanese Nikkei down 0.5%, while Chinese markets advanced, gaining 0.9%. On signs of an economic recovery in that region. Now, U.S. futures are in the green. It seems like markets are taking Jerome Powell's comments on the outlook for interest rates in their stride. Many analysts are surprised at where futures are sitting, as the expectation was that volatility will prevail after Powell confirmed the case for higher interest rates for longer. Volatility, however, has been prevailing in the local markets. The JSE all-share taking a beating, shedding over 2% at yesterday's close, while the rand's been trading weaker, sitting at 19.04 to the dollar.
And then the Purple Group, the Purple Group, they own Easy Equities. They return to profitability.
Yes, earnings season, Stephen, in South Africa is coming to a close, and we're seeing the last few counters releasing results, one of them being Purple Group, as you mentioned. This is the company that owns the Easy Equities investment platform, making it somewhat easier for to access financial markets for the average South African. So the group did well, returning to profitability in the half-year period. It says this was due to a rise in revenue and a decline in expenses. The Easy Equities unit delivered a near 35% jump in revenue, while profit after tax came in at 11.8 million rand. The company CEO, Charles Savage, said their bet on Easy Equities is starting to pay off, and that it plans to launch similar platforms, including Easy Retire and Easy Trader.
And then VW, they've said they're going to invest billions in a new plant.
It's seeing value in South Africa. The group will be investing 4 billion rand in its Eastern Cape plant towards building a new small SUV. According to the group's MD, the cash injection will be used for production facilities, tooling, quality assurance, and local content. And about 1.2 billion rand will help local component suppliers ready themselves for this new vehicle that they'll be building. VW says the first phase of production will take place at the end of the year. Now, in addition to the 4 billion rand, another 130 million has been set aside to hire 2 electric generators to shoulder the plant from load shedding disruptions. Now, over the last year, the group had faced production losses due to the power crisis. Now, that 130 million rand is expected to cover that expense in particular for the next 2 years.
Intaleng Lechela, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. Back, of course, tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SAFM. 24 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
That's the number. Will calls coming through, voice notes coming through as well about the elections, about the campaigning, also, of course, around the flooding in Margate over the weekend. Michael and Mtata, hi. You want to talk about home affairs?
Steve, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Michael. Go for it.
Please, I'm hoping that I'll give you indulgence to allow me to express one or two things. Steve, the problem is that when you are a foreigner in this country, you are limited in so many ways. Such that even if your right as an immigrant is abused, you literally have no say. We've had many cases where all of us, any foreign national, is put in the same box. Illegal immigrant, even from people who do not have the tools and the expertise to even check whether you are legal or illegal. Steve, every country also has immigration regulations that when an applicant or immigrant have met all the requirements, then it is also important that the state or the country for which they have sojourned would also do their part. Steve, you will not believe it that some of us have met all the requirements, tick the boxes. I have had an application that I've sat in Home Affairs. On the application portal, it takes 60 working days, and it has taken 3 years. Nobody cares about a foreigner. Some have got families that have been torn apart. Some are married to citizens who have children whose bank accounts have been closed, not because of fault of theirs. Nobody literally wants to be illegal when they know the right thing to do. Steve, I am talking to you as an lecturer whose applications have been sitting in Home Affairs for over 3 years. Nobody cares about it.
Sure.
Sometimes 4 years, 5, they don't just care because you are a foreigner. Who cares about you? You will meet all the requirements. They say, bring this, bring that. You meet all the requirements. Pay for the applications. And the turnaround time will pass for 4 years, for 5. Nobody cares.
Michael, I've always thought the reason for this is that foreign nationals don't have the vote. And that's why a government, I'm sure this happens in other places too, won't put resources to foreign nationals because they don't vote.
Yes, but Steve, what I'm saying is that when you have met the requirement in the United States, every application has turnaround time. It cannot be that a portal would tell you that this application is 60 days turnaround and it will be 2 years and nobody cares about it.
Yeah.
Is that fair on you? When you have met the requirement, some have families.
Yeah.
Who have been torn apart because the system isn't just working. Home Affairs does not care about that side of the application. It cannot be backlogged for 3 years, for 5 years. Then what do they go to work to do? Then why accepting new applications if you cannot process the applications?
Michael and Mtata, thank you. We've heard you. Look, I mean, there have been lots of calls and complaints around this, and the Minister had to do a big about turn last week on one proposal. And I do get the sense this is becoming more and more of an issue. But it's very frustrating. I know people have been talking about how families are separated as a result of this. Your view on it, 086 000 2032. Vusi and Midrand. Hello, Vusi.
Yeah, morning, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Vusi. How are you?
Good.
The Electoral Commission, go for it.
Yeah. My concern has been with the Electoral Commission. And thanks to Professor Ibrahim. You see, Steve, you can't have an IEC which is more lenient into courts. You can't have an ICC which is always interested in running to court. At the end of the day, then that credibility of the IEC. So we are making an appeal to the IEC to focus on election. And that thing does not only compromise the IEC, you even further put the judiciary at a very awkward position. That's why you see the judiciary lately is no longer interested in the issues of IEC. No wonder today, I won't be surprised if the IEC can, the judiciary, the courts, the courts can postpone this case of IEC. Because IEC on its own, instead of focusing on this core business, is now interested in running to court.
Well, so I hear that, but what if the court rules that the IEC was right to appeal? I mean, so I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying it may be a little early to say it, in that if the court rules that the IEC was right to appeal, well, then they were right. Do you see the point?
Yeah, no, I agree with you now. There, me and you, we agree. But the issue is with me. Instead of focusing on the core business, they're no longer focused on the core business. Look, we have a lot of new parties there. We don't hear anything about those new parties. What is their fate on those new parties? You see?
Well, I mean, that's just the way politics goes. Someone asked me the other day about this, and I said, it's up to those parties to do the campaigning and to get in the news. Vusi and Midrand, thank you. Lesiba Nkhobakwani, hi, the elections.
Yes, good morning, Stephen, and good morning to our producer, Levo. You see, Stephen, I just want to say, put a scenario that many people are not expecting. You see, as everybody, including the media, encouraging and create a vibe around coalition government, I want us to just look back what's happening in Ekurhuleni. You see what is happening in Ekurhuleni? Previous term, the EF was leading there as the mayor and supported by the ANC in the mayoral committees. Now they fuck the things around, the municipality collapsed, then they've decided that the ANC must lead, but they demanded five key portfolio committees, starting with finance.
Yeah.
So then you can see, as we will be pressurized, like the media is encouraging, if we can find ourselves as the ANC with it below 50%, do you know that we'll force to form coalition government with the EFF with Julius Malema becoming the deputy president? That will happen because we'll have no choice. So we'll just make sure that Julius Malema becomes the deputy president to Ramaphosa, and we'll allow him to steal because we'll have no choice. Because
but Lesiba, I don't think so. I mean, I've heard this argument, but I don't think a political party can say you must vote for us because otherwise, if we stay in power with someone else, it'll be worse. I don't know if that really. I mean, I don't know if that argument really works. I mean, maybe it does for some people. I don't know if it works.
What I'm saying, Stephen, look what is the improvement that we've got. I don't know how many days without load shedding. It means that our electricity action plan is working. The heaters are gone. There is improvement. The issue of the foreigners who are tackling on the ground, as you can see, the illegal mining, we are doing something, education. We are improving a lot. But if the people of this country will not give us the chance to continue to do the good work that we are doing, we will have no choice. We will become a majority party with not ultimate majority to govern this country. And we'll have to go to either the MK, Julius Malema, and give him the deputy president. And you know how he's stealing. You know how these young boys are stealing. We'll allow them to steal as long as we remain in power so that in the next 5 years, the people of this country will give the ANC ultimate majority. So it's happening in Ekurhuleni, it will happen in other municipalities.
Right.
We can work with the EF. Don't think that we'll not be able to work with them. We will force to work with them, and they will be stealing and will not do anything about it because that will be the decision of the people of this country.
Again, you're basically saying. If you represent the ANC and you clearly are an ANC supporter, Lesiba, I don't know if you belong or not, and you're not a spokesperson.
I'm a member, also a leader in the organization.
Okay. So what you're saying is, don't force us to work with someone who would then steal because we wouldn't be able to stop them stealing. I mean, is that really the argument you want to make?
That would be condition. I mean, if you are in coalition government, somebody like the EFF, it doesn't have a step-aside rule. Who will be having our step-aside? If our members get then the EFF, they will remain there going to court if they go to court, but continue to hold these key positions, including the finance. They will demand also the finance ministry. Then everybody will be concerned and say, what kind of a coalition? But you force us into this marriage. We don't want this marriage like it happened in Ekurhuleni, but we've got no choice but to form this kind of a marriage. So please, the people of this country must think about themselves. They must make sure that they vote for the future of their children. And if they vote ANC completely. If you vote opposition, vote opposition. But this thing of coalition, it's not going to work, I can tell you. Ekurhuleni, they will tell you, in many municipalities, it's not working.
Lesiba, we've heard you. Thank you. As you hear, he tells us he is a member of the ANC. Lesiba Nkhobakwani. Thanks. Tebogo in Lenasia. Hi, good morning. The elections. How are you feeling about it all this morning, Tebogo? Tebogo, are you with us? All right, Tebogo, we'll come back to you. And Kunzi in Pietermaritzburg. And Kunzi, hi.
Hi, Stephen.
Yeah, go for it.
Yesterday you had a guest there, or an expert on elections, and I think he made a very sound argument. He put a very sound argument forward that we must be careful of how we use the words in terms of what the IEC is doing.
Oh, yeah. So it's appealing versus seeking clarity.
Seeking clarity, because the IEC has put forward a notice of intention to appeal. They have not filed the papers as yet, because they cannot file the papers when they don't have the
reasons of the electoral court. Yeah, this is all about former President Zuma. Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, that is very important to really clarify. And let us discourage, people who, like Grootes is saying the IEC is rushing to courts. I mean, when was the last time the IEC was in court? So apart from this case, the impending case.
Well, I mean, they were in court on the registration case. They were arguing with MK there and against the ANC just 3 weeks ago in Kunzi. But I suppose they were responding to a challenge from the ANC. Is that your point?
Yeah, they were responding. They hardly take cases to the courts themselves. They are dragged into because of the way we craft our laws.
Yeah.
If the laws are not clear, just like in this case, where if the laws are ambiguous and they're not clear, then it's what they are supposed to do. They have to take the matters to courts to seek clarification. So, I mean, people who are like disparate, I'm not saying we must not criticize the IEC, but these people are working very hard under very, very challenging, difficult circumstances to make sure that our elections are credible.
All right.
And lastly, Stephen, where is Stephen Friedman? Why don't we invite Stephen Friedman to come and because, I mean, we have now these partisan analysts who have to come here, who clearly are partisan. But we have people like Stephen Friedman during elections who are well and capable to, what's happening.
That's a good.
Friedman.
All right, and Kunzi, I don't know. We'll ask him. I'll message him today and say that you're looking for him. Thank you. And Kunzi and Peter Maritzburg. Alfred and Mpumalanga, hi, the elections.
Steven, how's it?
All right, good morning. Go for it.
No, I'm good, man. Steven, I'm just saying the game that is played by these political parties is quite interesting. Everyone is now panicking to say once you vote so and so and so, there will be corruption. Once you vote so and so and so, there will be corruption. And for the ruling party, I want to be clear with them that they must stop telling South Africans or coming into a media and talk about the corruption of Jacob Zuma. Stephen, I don't know whether you know that Gupta captured the ANC, not Jacob Zuma. I don't know we're aware of that.
Well,
I want to take back some years back in the rally of Northwest, when Julius was given a slot, he talked about the Guptas who have captured the ruling party. Even before...
I think the quote was, Alfred, remind me, make sure I get this right, was that we don't want to become the ANC of families.
Correct.
I was there, yes.
Correct. Yes. I'm happy that we were there.
Mm.
So I'm trying to say they must stop spreading lies with the name of Jacob Zuma.
Well, yeah. Alfred, look, I mean, we all saw the Zondo Commission evidence, and it wasn't just Zuma from the ANC who was implicated in that, but people will have to make up their own minds, and the ANC says it's going through a process of renewal, and again, it's up for voters to decide.
It's for the voters to decide. But if they are having a case against Jacob Zuma on corruption, let them take that matter forward. It's simple.
Well, it's up to the NPA to do that. Alfred, and from the line from Mpumalanga, thank you. Tebogo and Lenasia, I think you're back with us now. Hi.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just want quickly to speak about the issue on the NK party.
Yeah.
I don't really think the NK party will do much better when it comes to this election, especially when you look at the Western Cape. I don't really think there will be anyone who will make sure that the NK party goes to parliament. Look at the Eastern Cape, you look at the Northern Cape. At least the NK party can make much better in KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga and Gauteng. But I don't think it will make better in other provinces.
Yeah.
Because
Tebogo, I mean, at face value, I don't live in those other provinces, but I'd have to sort of agree with that. I see no evidence. I see no campaigning for MK in the Northern Cape, for example. Yes. I do think former President Zuma has been to the Eastern Cape recently, though, so that might be different.
Yes, that will not make any. That will make no difference. But that was my point this morning. But I don't really think they will make. They will even go to Parliament with more seats or to govern us, unless they are going to bring the party to counter instability.
Just bear in mind that KZN has the second highest population after Gauteng, so there are a lot of people there. So percentage-wise in Parliament, it could be interesting depending on how it pans out.
Yes, let's see how it's going to go. But yes, I think KZN can do much better than other provinces when it comes to MK. Yeah. But I don't really think other provinces, especially the votes that are coming from white people, I'm not being racist, and then colored people and Arab black people, knowing what the President Jacob Zuma and the Grootes Indians have done to the country. So I don't really think MK will do much better.
Tabok on the line from Lenasia. Thank you. 8 minutes now to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A couple of bits of protesting around the country having a major impact in terms of closing off roads. One is the N2 at Butterworth down in the Eastern Cape, protesting this morning, closing the road on the eastern side of Butterworth town. So between the town centre and the university, that section of the N2 is blocked off. There are roads that you will divert to, but it'll put some additional time onto your travel. And protesting that we mentioned earlier between Pietermaritzburg and Thornville, that has closed the R56. So there's no direct way through using that 56. That's the Richmond Pietermaritzburg, if you like, the Kopo Pietermaritzburg closed just north of the Thornville area. Staying in KZN, pretty heavily backed on the N2 both ways. You've got northbound traffic queuing from the M7 through Spaghetti Junction into the roadworks, and you've got probably what's to be the first of many again today, a breakdown before Spaghetti Junction. So a queue that extends all the way back to Queen Nandi Drive. Still clearing up an earlier crash at Palm View, so the R102 and JG Champion routes remain under pressure. Both routes are very slow. Collision seen on the M1 South in Pretoria this morning, following up yesterday's major crash with another one this morning. It's just before Rigel Avenue. Traffic is heavily backed almost to Storham Full Road. So again, you want to avoid the N1 South between the N4 and Rigel Avenue, and then going north. It's a big enough crash that everybody having a look at it. So from Buerta Avenue through to Garsfontein, it's fairly heavily backed as well. Crash on the 511 just north of the N14. If you're coming into the Deep Split area, expect to queue up through there. Roadworks on the M1 North, leaving Soweto to Maritzburg, again causing problems. And just outside Cape Town, if you're on your way to Stellenbosch, most routes are pretty heavily backed up, particularly Adam Tuss, which is the extension of Baden-Powell, heading in towards central Stellenbosch. That's heavy, and a bit of mist around the city centre of Cape Town this morning. So everything on a go slow, including the N1, which backs from Belleville all the way through to the foreshore and the elevated freeway and some poor visibility. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
6 minutes now to 8 the time. Well, you know the number. There was a report yesterday, and you heard them in the news bulletins here on SAFM, around the DA in Gauteng criticising the Provincial Health Department for spending money on hiring Cuban doctors when there are South African doctors who are unemployed. And there's a lot to this, as you know. South African doctors who are registered, ready to practice, say that the Health Department hasn't been able to employ them. The Health Department says the reason it hasn't been able to do that is it hasn't been able to fund the post, doesn't have the money. And it seems, though, that we do still have Cuban doctors that are being paid, and they are, in other words, their services are being paid for by the Gauteng Health Department. Now, the Africa Medical Association says that the Cuban doctors shouldn't be blamed for all of this. Their president is Dr. Jose Letlape. Dr. Letlape, good morning to you. You and I have spoken many times over many years. You've played a big role in our society, but it's been a long time. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you and good morning to the listeners.
You say we shouldn't blame the Cuban doctors. Why do you say that?
Because if you look at our healthcare system, we've had Cuban doctors that have plugged the gaps, that have worked in our rural areas where we as South African doctors were not prepared to go. So if we have people that are properly contracted, that are delivering services, we can't be anti those people. There's nothing with the notion of ensuring that South Africans should be absorbed. The challenges that we have is that we still don't have sufficient doctors in the public sector, and we are spending money in areas we should not be spending money on. And remember, Stephen Grootes, when the reporter spoke to me, I was speaking in my capacity as the head of health in Action SA. and not as the president of the African Medical Association.
I didn't realize you joined Action SA. Thank you for being upfront about it. I do appreciate that. As I understand it, your leader, Herman Mashaba, has been very critical of South Africa's relationship with Cuba. He's been on our radio station a couple of times over the last few years saying basically that we shouldn't have this relationship. So then, are you saying we shouldn't blame the Cuban doctors, but your leader's been very critical of our relationship with Cuba? I'm a little confused.
No, you shouldn't be confused. I think what the president is saying is that we have sufficient resources to build our own stock. And all that we are saying is that if you have people that have legitimate contracts, we should not be anti those people. As Action SA, will ensure that we rebuild South Africa using the skill set that are in South Africa. Is there's a skills shortage and we need to import skills for a short-term period in whatever area, it will be solely for the purpose of building our own capacity and having assistance, not on the issue of giving jobs to people outside that can be done by South Africans.
Okay. So I suppose in the end, what it also boils down to is, are we getting value for money? And I think that many South Africans are going to feel, and I think this is a legitimate feeling. I think you'd be right to feel this, that I'm a South African. If I were a South African doctor and I'm unemployed, my first instinct would be, why are you picking someone from another country over me? And I mean, that would be sort of an important thing to say.
Well, that would be an important thing to say, but you need to go into the detail. Those people that have been brought in, have they been brought in for special skills? When you come in and you're a young doctor, what special skills do you bring? Those are the issues that need to be analyzed so that we're not seen as being anti-other people and a violation of human rights. What is our human resource plan? Why have they been brought in? Are there South Africans that can do that? Do a proper analysis. When you talk about those Cuban doctors that are on those scales, it is possible that these people have been around for years. These are experienced doctors that may be providing special skills. As I've said, Stephen, we are for growing our own timber, but we should know what the situation is. There's absolutely no reason why we have unemployed doctors when we still have a great need for doctors and other healthcare professionals. The challenge is misspent budgets, corruption, and we're having people that are in our health system that are providing no value. We're spending inordinate amounts of money on consultants instead of appointing capable people that don't need to have their hands held by outside people.
It's interesting, Dr.
Our problem is wastage, Stephen, and all these young doctors are needed in the system and they should be employed. So we need to rearrange, clear the decks, get rid of dead bodies, and ensure that young professionals in all categories, nurses, doctors, pharmacists, are employed in our system.
It's I'm intrigued by how important health is to people's lives and health systems, and yet it doesn't seem to me that health has become a major big issue, a huge issue in these elections. Are you surprised by that?
Yes and no. We are a two-tier society, and everybody that's on the other side of the tracks is trying to jump ship. And that's how we've been socialized, most of us, over 400 years. Not to improve our lot, but to escape to where it is better. We're going to require a lot of social re-education, community engagements, dialogues, for people to know that they have agency, to know that they matter. People have been battered to the point where they feel worthless. We've got to restore human dignity so that people should know that what they are being given is unacceptable. We can't have privileged South Africans in the same country and at the same parliament having a healthcare system driven by a parliament that is separate from the others. We still have apartheid in health, and we need to ensure that all of us look into ourselves and we build a South Africa that will live up to Section 27 of the Constitution of quality healthcare for all within available resources.
Dr. Khosilet Lape, thank you. Speaking both as a member of Action SA, I wasn't aware of that, and president of the African Medical Association. It's you with SFM leading the conversation at 8:00.
Top stories for this hour. Police presence in Mahikeng amid protest reports, and Ecuador faces an energy emergency. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. Police are patrolling the streets of Mahikeng in the northwest following reports of a possible protest over lack of basic services. The organizers of what is dubbed as the Save Mahikeng protest say the aim is to bring the town to a standstill. They have vowed to ensure the closure of all roads leading to the Mahikeng CBD. Itumeleng Khajan reports.
Police vehicles can be seen patrolling some streets of Mahikeng. Many intersections are manned by traffic officials, while fire trucks were spotted in some areas. Buses were seen ferrying people to different destinations. Minibus taxis can also be seen entering and leaving the CBD. Some people were jogging next to the roads, while others were seen entering their workplaces. No road closures have been reported yet. Itumeleng Khajan, SABC News, Mahikeng.
A cell phone data analyst is expected to unpack the findings from a phone which was in the possession of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder case when the trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain in October 2014. The state has laid evidence on cell phones allegedly found in the possession of 2 of the accused while they were in custody. Lieutenant Colonel Gideon Khos.
In 2023-09, I was contacted. I said Colonel Stenenberg, I was contacted by Brigadier Kaninda from the cold case, and he directed me to assist Colonel Stein on the analysis of a downloaded phone on Vosloorus 636 of 10/2014. On 2023-09-06, I received a request form and a CD marked Vosloorus 636-11-2014 in a sealed forensic bag.
The Gauteng Education MEC Matome Chelwane will this morning visit Davidton Skills School in Benoni, east of Johannesburg. This after 2 learners drowned in the Henops River near Centurion, north of Pretoria, during a school excursion on Monday. The learners were attending a discipline camp that the NGO Rising Star Generation had organized on Friday last week. The Gauteng Education spokesperson Steve Mabon.
The purpose of the MEC's visit is to ascertain more details about the circumstances which led to this tragic incident in order to determine a way forward on this matter.
Looking further afield, Zambia has made an appeal to the international community for $900 million, or more than 17 billion rand, to deal with its worst drought on record. In a televised address, President Hakainde Hichilema said half of the country's population had been affected.
The effects of this drought were most clearly observed in the crop production, where 1 million hectares of the planted maize has been adversely affected across the 84 of our 116 districts across the country. Similarly, pasture availability has reduced for animals, while ground and surface water levels have also been impacted negatively.
And lastly, Ecuador has declared an energy emergency. This as severe drought affects its ability to produce hydroelectricity. President Daniel Noboa has announced several measures to counter the crisis, including rationing power nationwide. The BBC's Mimi Swabi has the details.
The El Niño weather phenomenon is being blamed for a severe drought in Ecuador and across the region, which has now crippled the country's main source of electricity because this is hydroelectric dams. That is where the majority of Ecuador's power and energy comes from. So the climate phenomenon basically means the warming of the Pacific Ocean. So in this region, it means less rainfall and higher temperatures. This has had a direct consequence on water reservoir levels. So in Ecuador, they're currently at around 30% capacity, so extremely low.
Recapping the top story at 8, police are patrolling the streets of Mahikeng in the northwest following reports of a possible protest over lack of basic services. The organizers of what is dubbed as the Save Mahikeng protest say the aim is to bring the town to a standstill. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket, there's history in the making as Ayabonga Kaka eyes her 100th cap for the Proteas women when they take on Sri Lanka today. And in football, the Amajimbo's journey to Colombia hits a snag. We'll bring you the full details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Top traffic story very familiar to yesterday. It's the N1 going south. Another morning of very heavy delays in Pretoria. The crash before Rigel Avenue this morning. Traffic back to the N4 Emelefeli Highway. It's in the right lane, so highly visible to northbound traffic, which is now backing up through the R21 towards Garsfontein Road. The N1 north through Beclue up to Allendale Road. All of a sudden, that's getting very busy. And Mike 1 this morning under pressure from Gold Reef City all the way through to Oxford Road in the Parktown area. Durban, a breakdown into south at Spaghetti Junction. That traffic is heavy all the way back through to Queen Nundy Drive. That's a really big queue. And then if you're heading north on the N2, stationary vehicle at Gateway causing a delay for airport-bound traffic this morning. That's a stationary vehicle in the roadworks. Cape Town, Tableview, unusually slow on the Coburg Road, heading north towards Bloberg Road. Big queues there, passing the refinery. Misty conditions around Cape Town. It may be starting to burn off, but it has left some very busy conditions on the roads. The N1, for example, heavy from Belleville all the way through to the elevated freeway and city centre, and the M5 quite heavy backlogs from Rondebosch through Maitland towards the Coburg Interchange area. And just a reminder, Butterworth, the N2 is closed between Butterworth and the university. That's on the eastern side of town due to protest action. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 8. Good morning with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, I don't know what you thought about that conversation around Cuban doctors. As I say, so many different things have happened. I didn't actually realize Dr. Litlapa had joined Action SA, so sorry about that. But it's still very interesting just to get the view from him on that issue. We'll talk in a little while around an innovation where a young person has basically created a portable power solution to help people living in townships and shacks. Essentially, it's a very cheap kind of solar device. We'll find out more how it works from the inventor. And then don't forget, from 8:30 this morning, we'll be looking at the situation around property and property pricing. And we do this from time to time simply because it's so important. It gives you a really good indication of how people feel about the economy and why that's important. So all of that to come. You know the number as well, 086 000 2032.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
All right. Well, good to hear from you this morning. Also important, of course, to hear from other issues as well. I don't know how you're feeling about the elections. There have been so many different comments that have been made, and all the different parties have been saying different things. But I still get the sense, and just to sort of repeat what I said at the start of the show this morning, I just don't know if we yet know what the main issue of these elections or the main issues of these elections will really be. I mean, it seems to me that everyone's sort of talking in a way at cross purposes from each other. And I think that probably will change over the next little while.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Well, there have been some reports now that prison warders in prisons are having to guard inmates who have been diagnosed with mental disorders, when instead those inmates, which are often called state patients, should actually be in psychiatric facilities. Now, you can imagine the pressure that this puts on a warden. They're supposed to look after people or guard people. Instead, now they're looking after people who are mentally ill, and they don't have the qualifications to do that. Some of the unions are very worried about that as well. The Deputy Commissioner for Communications in the Department of Correctional Services is Logan Maestri. Logan, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners, and many thanks for the opportunity.
Is it true that inmates who've been declared state patients, who normally would be cared for in psychiatric facilities, are now being looked after in normal prisons?
Well, Stephen, this has been continuing for some time, and as the Department of Correctional Services, we are engaging with all the relevant stakeholders to address this. But to also mention that the Criminal Procedure Act mandates that state patients be detained in a psychiatric hospital or prison as determined by a judge. However, the Mental Health Care Act stipulates that all state patients should be transferred from a correctional facility to a mental health institution within 14 days. And in terms of the amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act, a person declared a state patient should only temporarily remain in a DCS health facility and be transferred to a psychiatric hospital when a bed becomes available. However, statistics show that most patients remain in correctional facilities beyond 14 days due to the limited number of available beds. And DCS is continuously engaging with the Department of Health, designated mental health institutions, about the availability of beds and the backlog at the Department of Correctional Facilities.
Okay, I realize, Logan, that this is the real world that we're dealing with, and not everything happens as we would like it to. So when you have people who are state patients in a prison, and in some cases they're clearly there for a long time, are they kept away from the general prison population? Are they looked after in a particular way?
Yes, definitely, Stephen. State patients are kept separately from other inmates in correctional facilities. And for you to also be aware that we have specialized healthcare professionals in our facilities, or they are not adequate. We have psychiatrists, psychologists, and other professionals. And then out of an inmate population of 156,025, we currently have 214 state patients at correctional facilities across the country. The Eastern Cape has the highest number of 93, the Free State Northern Cape 56, Limpopo, Mpumalanga in the Northwest 37, Gauteng 14, KZN 14. In the Western Cape, we don't have any state patients in correctional facilities. So this is one province where we have no state patients because the state patients in this province are sent directly to mental health care institutions.
Okay, so when you have these prisoners in this position, then is it ordinary wardens who have to look after them? I mean, that's the problem that they have, right?
In terms of security, yes. But in terms of their mental health care issues, like I said, we have doctors, we have psychiatrists, we have psychologists. But because of the capacity challenges in correctional facilities, this is not our key mandate. That's why they should be transferred as quickly as possible. And so this issue of state patients is raised daily, weekly, and monthly by DCS at every available platform by our Minister, Ronald Lamola, Deputy Minister Nkosi Holomisa, and the National Commissioner Tabahale, including at Parliament, Cabinet, the various cluster, as well as provincial and local structures.
Is there any plan to increase the capacity of the psychiatric facilities, which is clearly the way that we need to go?
Well, that's the assurance we're getting from the Department of Health. In fact, in the Eastern Cape, the one inmate that you've been referring to has been immediately transferred. We've written to the Department of Health as well, so they are trying their best. But you know that mental illnesses is a cause for concern. There's an increase in South Africa, around the globe. So we're working with the Department of Health and all relevant stakeholders to make sure that they're transferred out of our facilities as soon as possible.
The risk, of course, is that it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for prison wardens. It can be dangerous for the patients themselves, sometimes dangerous for other people. And that's really what we need to avoid. So that can be quite difficult because people who are mentally ill have a right to be treated in a humane way. And your facilities are not designed to actually do that. So with the best will in the world, the most help you can give, it's still very difficult.
You're absolutely right, Stephen. But like I said earlier on, if we get an order from court, we have to comply. But for that simple reason, because we realize that we are not fully capacitated, and this is not our key mandate. It's a key mandate of the Department of Health. We are raising this issue all the time. The Department of Health is trying their best, but you are absolutely right. It is a challenge currently for us as the Department of Correctional Services.
Logan Maestri, thank you. Deputy Commissioner for Communications in the Department of Correctional Services, 14 minutes after 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, good to hear from you this morning. Lebo on the line from Johannesburg. Lebo, hi. You want to talk about the doctors? Is it the Cuban doctors, Lebo?
Yes, no, it is that issue, but more relating to the unemployed doctors. I'm finding it hard to understand why government would look to always create the employment. I think from my end, I would try to rather fund startups in terms of the doctors, because we're saying we're in need of doctors in South Africa, in rural areas especially. So why not look for initiatives that would set the doctors up for private practice rather than try to employ them in the system? Because obviously employing them in the system puts a lot of strain on the coffers. So that's my only concern. I'm trying to figure out why aren't we thinking differently about it.
Yeah, I think these are also people who want to work in hospitals. I think that's one of the issues. But I hear your point. I mean, they can work anywhere. Why they're demanding jobs from government, I suppose, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
All right, Lebo on the line from Johannesburg. Thank you. It's very interesting to sort of see questions around that. Let's go to Denelton in Mpumalanga, if I remember. Siphumelelo, hi.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
I think it's very heartbreaking that as South Africans we have to wait for when it's around election time for there to be service delivery. I mean, the reports of protests all across the country that you were reporting on in the news, this is all because, residents know that because it's around election time, they're most likely to get service delivery. I was reading an article this morning from Daily Maverick yesterday that the public sector union are wanting to also protest over the 4.7 public service salary increase. And that's mainly because, they know they are aware that they are nearing election time.
Yeah.
And so if they protest now, prior to election, they're most likely to get answered.
Yeah.
And I think that's heartbreaking as South Africans, that we have to wait for at least 5 years until things can get done when it's election time. And then once we complain during this time, then our complaints are ahead.
Yeah. Siphumelelo, look, I mean, I don't think we're the only country in the world where it happens, although it may happen more here. I don't know. Certainly with issues around protests. But I think it's an important point. I mean, service delivery should be the priority all the time, and it so often isn't. I mean, that's really one of the issues that we have. You're there, SAFM. It's 17 minutes now after 8 the time.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
You may remember 2 days ago on Monday, we took a call from Mohammed. Mohammed's a doctor, so is his partner, his wife, and and he was talking about what happened when they arrived at the security gate for a Fly Safair flight, and they were literally 1 minute late, and the bus to take the passengers to the plane was still there. And he was very upset. He said Fly Safair simply wouldn't let them on the plane, and they should have been able to actually get on the plane, and instead all sorts of other things happened. And he said that there were people on standby. There was no way for them to actually sort the situation out. And we spoke to Fly Safair. They sent us this response. They say, "We will gladly look into the details of the passenger's claims around his arrival at the gates, but we must note that by his own admission, he and his family were late for boarding. The process of orchestrating the departure of a flight is a complex one with numerous practical and regulatory procedures that need to be undertaken. And the small request that we make of customers is that they meet us with punctuality for their boarding procedures. For clarity, the flight in question left with empty seats. The customers were not denied boarding for overbooking. They were denied boarding because they were late." That's what Fly Safair says. 18 after 8.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Tabo on the line from the Vaal. Tabo, hi. This conversation around mental health and people who are mentally ill in prisons. Go for it.
Hey, SG, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Tabo.
I'm good, thank you. I would like to challenge that gentleman whom has just spoken and gave you the numbers about the prison and the mental health.
Logan Maestri. Yeah, I was surprised the numbers seemed quite low to me.
No, it's a lie, Stephen. It's an utter lie. And I'm very much disgusted because I grew up in prison, not as a prisoner. I worked there from when I was very young. This thing is happening until today. We have a challenge of these mental health prisoners. And it goes to a point, Stephen, whereby they are violated sexually, Stephen. And we have to, live up with such things. Some of them are uncontrollable. You know what, Stephen? At some point, we going to as far as improvising now. Try to get these PP things, you see, the cigarettes and stuff, just to pack them so that they can wash.
Yeah, sure.
It's a mess, Stephen. And these guys, because they are sitting somewhere there, they act as if they don't know. It's an everyday thing, not one only maybe from my unit. In my unit, maybe I'll have close to 11, and we have about 6 units. So you multiply it by 6. That will be the number, Stephen. It's a lie. That means it's a lie. Such people are not supposed to exist. Because now you are raising a point that is supposed to be attended to and help these mentally challenged people. Instead, you find a person who comes and say, no, these numbers, Gauteng has 20, 15. It's wrong, Stephen. Please challenge these people so that they can help us out. Even ourselves, when you come home, you are like, let me just take off the shoes, Stephen. Thank you so much. But please, these people, when you call them, you must also call them to account. It's wrong.
All right, Tabo, thank you. Okay, very interesting and sort of insider's view of that situation. Very interesting. Scully on the line, I think from Durban, Scully. Hi, the Cuban doctors.
Good morning to you, Stephen.
Go for
it's
it.
Scully, yes.
Yes.
And not particularly the Cuban doctors. I mean, doctors should be traveling everywhere to get jobs, you know. They're doing a completely different service from anyone else. Okay, the doctor shortage in our country, in the hospitals, employ the doctors that are unemployed, you know. Go to any hospital, but people have to go 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning just to be treated, you know, by 7, 8 hours later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen.
All right, Scully on the line there. Thank you very much indeed. Very interesting just to sort of hear different views on all of this. Very quickly, let's hear from Janos in Cape Town. Janos, hi. Voting in the elections?
Yes. The reason why I will not support DA, you know, we've got a sort of different slogans, like ANC had a better life for all. We know that doesn't work for all. We know that, for instance, EFF, kill the farmer, kill the Boer.
Well, that's not their slogan, but yeah, I see your point. Yeah.
Okay, that's we can see exactly where they are going. But now we've got the DA, which is actually, in my opinion, white on the top, but doesn't really in the democracy support all of the people. You know, because they are people in the DA at the top of the government. They are white, but when you go to the bottom, you know, in the true democracy doesn't work like that. That you support one section only. When you come to, for instance, the Cape Town, which is sort of 1/3 white, then black and colors. If you go to municipality, for instance, you don't see any single white worker working there. No electrician.
Oh, I see. When
I came to Cape Town a long time ago, I was working for the municipality. We had a good relationship. There were mixed employment. Now you don't see any white person working for the municipality. You don't see any. Go to the shops, go to the factories. Everything is. I know that maybe they are cheaper, they pay less, but the practice part, you know. The DA got such a policy, not a policy, but a picture like I see. When, for instance, you see the woman is raped, I will tell you, no, I don't agree with what you're doing and walk away. So that's why I will not vote for the DA.
All right, Janos.
Of the race.
All right, Janos on the line from Cape Town. Very interesting. I'd never thought of it in that way. And I don't know why that would be. 23 after 8.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, it's interesting to hear how people come up with different solutions to different problems. And we've been talking for a long time around sort of industrial solar power, people spending a huge amount of money getting solar power into their homes. We know how, I think, 4,000 megawatts have been added in terms of generation, of generating capacity by people who've been doing that. But not all of it has to be big. And one person's created their own solar-powered device. It's called the Tsepo, and the creator is Vincent Mosebe. Vincent, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Just speak as loudly as you can, please, Vincent. How does the Tsepo work? What does it do?
So basically, we developed these portable power stations with a variety of them. So basically, they are to serve as a safe alternative to traditional sources of light, such as
Right, Vincent, I don't know if you're speaking into a headphone or something. Just speak into the main microphone, please. We're battling to hear you. So, what does it actually do?
It serves as a tradition. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sort of. Anyway, go on.
So the products that we developed to serve as safe alternatives or replacements to the traditional sources of light for people living in unsafe communities, because people living in these communities tend to use things like paraffin lamps and candlesticks due to energy poverty, and often it leads to shot fires, and on average there's about 10 shot fires a day in South Africa.
All right, Vincent, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you just to move around as much as you can. Maybe just sort of, I don't know, put your phone in your other hand or something. Might just change the way that it's interacting with your mouth. I know that's a strange thing to say. But you say that it acts as a sort of solar-powered power station. Is that right?
Yes, it's solar-powered portable power stations.
Okay. And how much sun does it actually need to work?
It doesn't really need much sunlight. We developed it in the sense that we understand that we don't have sunlight all year round, and we have winter and other seasons. So we developed it in a way that it has fast recharging capabilities. So you need about less than half a day. If it is that you're using our adapters, we could provide the recharge. You get about less than half an hour to recharge them, and we can last you for over 24 hours.
And what can you power with it? Can you run a TV?
Simple version 1 that's just catering to your essential energy needs, such as recharging mobile devices, your light bulbs, and an additional port for maybe other 12-volt devices. Version 2, the same good as the version 1, but it has an additional exterminating capabilities. Version 3, on the other hand, has a 300-watt inverter, which now allows you to power other smaller devices, your laptop, Wi-Fi router, and other things. Then we have another version, we call it a Power Mini, and that one has a 1.2 kilowatt inverter inside with a bigger battery, and that you can run almost anything on it.
All right, Vincent, I'm sorry, battling to hear you. I'm sorry about that. Vincent Mosebe there, the founder of the organization which has been creating the device called Tsepo. We thought it would be useful just to hear from that. Sorry about the problems with the connection. Coming up now to 27 minutes after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. What's happening in the Proteas pacer Ayabonga Kaka?
A century of matches for her, Steve-O. She is just been masterful, as she will be quite significant today when her team, the Proteas women, gear up to face Sri Lanka in the third and final ICC Women's Championship. It's the one-day international happening in Potchefstroom this afternoon from 2 p.m. The spotlight will be on Ayabonga Kaka. She's a seasoned South African pacer. She's marking her 100th appearance in the ODI format. Now looking ahead to the encounter following the 7-wicket win in the second ODI in Kimberley, which saw Kaka claim figures of 3 for 28, the 31-year-old remains focused.
It was okay. I think I'm just focusing on getting confidence back and hitting my straps again, and I'm just taking what I can take. My focus is just trying to hit my lines and length, and the results is not something that I'm focusing on, but it's always great to contribute to the team.
Soccer News, SABC Sport has learned that the South African under-17 boys national team, their trip to Colombia hanging in the balance. Amajimbos, as the team is popularly known, is believed to be at their base camp, which is the SAFA Technical Center. But owing to some travelling complications, they did not board their flight to Sao Paulo, Brazil via Luanda. Amajimbos, who have not been in action since the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Algeria in 2023, had been invited to the Santiago de Cali by their Colombian counterparts to play 2 international friendly matches as they continue with preparations for the upcoming COSAFA Under-17 Championships and the 2025 AFCON qualifiers. Action at home, SuperSport United want to turn the tide in the remaining games, starting with their home fixture against Polokwane City in the DStv Premiership tonight. Masatsansa want to quickly forget the 4-0 drubbing handed to them by Stellenbosch FC at the weekend in the Nedbank Cup quarter-final. Their goalkeeper, Ricardo Goss, is also confident that SuperSport will end their dip in form.
Working hard, and I think it's going to fall for us because in the games, if you watch, we create more chances than the opponents, but we've just been unlucky, I think. But we just need to keep working hard. You know, there are rough patches. Teams go through rough patches. Even Liverpool lost yesterday. Arsenal lost yesterday. Everybody loses. So I just feel like we need to work hard and just try to defend men better as a group.
Meanwhile, Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker says this will be a defining week for their ambitions to finish runners-up in the DStv Premiership. The side from the Winelands are away to high-flying Sekhukhune United tonight in Polokwane, hoping to continue their unbeaten run of 21 games in all competitions, having also progressed to the semi-finals of the Nedbank Cup. Tennis action, Rafa Nadal enjoyed a winning start at the Barcelona Open. The Spanish 22-time major champion, who turns 38 in June, won 6-2, 6-3 against inexperienced Italian Flavio Cobolli in their first round match. And in the women's tournament, there's Linda Noskova. She crushed the 8th seed Yelena Ostapenko 6-3, 6-1 in the first round of the Stuttgart Open. The 19-year-old Czech Noskova appeared to be making a meteoric rise up the rankings. She has already beaten number 1 seed Iga Swiatek and Elena Rybakina, and that was at the Australian Open quarterfinalist. That's a wrap of off your sport on Sunrise. We'll have more sport on SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Tan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The value of your home, your family's home. What does it tell us about where we are in our economy? That to come with SFM leading the conversation 8:30.
In your news making headlines for this hour, a fire in Du Toitskloof Pass between Paarl and Worcester in the Boerland is still burning out of control. Joanne Otto, the spokesperson for the Cape Winelands District Municipality, says the fire and the blaze is moving up the mountain. In other news, police are patrolling the streets in Mahikeng in the northwest, following reports of a possible protest over lack of basic services. The organisers of what is dubbed as the Save Mahikeng protest say the aim is to bring the town to a standstill. And lastly, Haiti's government has named the 9 members of the new transitional council that's due to take over power and organise elections. I'll be back at 9 for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And still very slow coming down Pretoria's N1 South. It's the top story this morning, very familiar to yesterday. It's this crash that happened between Carlsfontein and Rigel Avenue. It's been there since 6 o'clock this morning. Traffic still heavy right back almost to the N4 Emelathleni Highway. That's driving south northbound because it's in the right lane. Everybody having a look at it. So through the R21 towards Carlsfontein, that stays backed up as well. The Mike 1 starting to ease into Joburg, but still busy coming through from Boysons up towards sort of Empire Road territory. Now, broken down truck after Pietermaritzburg on your way to Durban. That truck's stuck at Ashburton. That's a heavy queue from Market Road. There's also a breakdown going into Spaghetti Junction, so queues from Queen Nandi Drive driving southbound, and a breakdown at Gateway and the roadworks going north. So there's a backlog from the Kumashu Highway. Staying in KZN, the R56 remaining closed between Thornville and Pietermaritzburg. That's good because of some protesting this morning. Burning tyres blocking that entire 56. That's the Richmond Pietermaritzburg road, if you like, just north of Thornville. And Cape Town's a very heavy mist across the sort of central area, so visibility significantly reduced. Everything on the go slow, including the N1, which is under pressure from Plattercliff Hill all the way through to the CBD. The M3 staying heavily back from Constantia right through to Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9 the time. Time for your mediated conversation this Wednesday morning. In many parts of the country at the moment, people are looking at the property market and wondering if their homes and their families' homes will retain their value. In some places in Joburg, for example, it can appear as if middle-class people are moving to Cape Town. That's pushed Western Cape property prices up, but kept prices in other parts of the country fairly low. The same, I think, may have happened in places like eThekwini, which has been hit by problems with service delivery and flooding. But a new report says, in fact, that last year was the best ever year for property in Soweto, and that people spent nearly 900 million rand on properties in Soweto in 2023. This really demonstrates how, when it comes to property, it depends where you are. It also shows how different parts of our society are moving in different directions. So then what movement is happening, and if interest rates are cut this year, would this make a major difference to our property market? First, this morning, the situation regarding property movements. Hayley Evans-Downs is the head of digital at Lightstone Property SA. They monitor property movements. Then Tim Akanusi is the CEO and co-founder of mortgagemarket.co.za. And finally, Carlo Mariani is a property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. We start then with the head of digital at Lightstone Property SA, Hayley Evans-Downs. Hayley, good morning and thanks for your time. Hayley, are you with us? All right, we seem to be battling to get Hayley Evans-Downs with you on the on our mediated. I think she's with us now. Hayley Evans-Downs, good morning. I understand you're with us now. Oh, dearie me. All right, no, doesn't seem to be the case. Not entirely sure what happened there, but we do need to start with her, unfortunately, because this is about her market. Hayley, are you with us?
I can hear you.
Yeah, all right. Sorry about that. What does...
No.
All right. What does the report tell us about what's happening in the Soweto property market?
So it's been quite interesting and also exciting in a way. We've seen an uptick really around the value of property, and that's where we're kind of seeing the increase in 2023. Volume pretty much at a 2017 level, but definitely up on the value. So we're seeing purchasing obviously happening at a higher value, which is interesting in itself, and also obviously volume of it. There seems to be a move, kind of people moving back back into the Soweto area, which is really good for the economy there.
I presume this also means that some parts of Soweto are more popular than others. You get obviously more valuable for a property in some parts than in other parts, and you can start to see changes in areas if you look at information like this.
Definitely. We're seeing an uptick mainly in your Protea Glen extension, your 25 extension 31, your Jabulani. Those areas are very much around your shopping malls, your Jabulani Mall, your Protea Glen Mall, close to schools, close to access. So there's a lot more. 52% of sales in Soweto last year actually happened in those three suburbs. So definitely an uptick there.
One of the major dynamics in our society in the last 30 years is how so many people have grown up in a township and then been able to get a job in the formal sector and move into the suburbs. Is that dynamic still happening, or could some people now be deciding to stay in Soweto close to the community in which they grew up?
Absolutely. I think ever since COVID, quite honestly, I think work has become very hybrid. I think you have an ability now to work wherever you are able to work. Most companies are offering that opportunity. And as a result, you have an opportunity to live where you're really wanting to live. So culturally, price-wise, rates, costs, if it makes sense for you to be in Soweto, then it's definitely the option for you.
Do you think this process then of property in Soweto perhaps increasing in value is going to continue? If people don't feel, and I mean, it's different for everybody, right? Some people feel still very strongly pulled to the suburbs. But if what you say is true, then it would stand to reason that in particularly the areas you mention, the prices of property in those areas of Soweto is going to skyrocket at some point.
Absolutely. I think, the big thing holding back at the moment is obviously the interest rates. It's really a dampener at the moment on consumers and obviously buying. I think if we get relaxation around interest rates, I think we're going to see a demand once again on property. And I think these property prices are in that market that you're not paying the transfer fees. You're not, you're under that cap. So the affordability is definitely there. So we foresee that should an interest rate drop, we will see more demand and we'll see more purchasing.
Is it possible to know what we're seeing in some parts of Soweto is happening in other formerly township areas as well? Or could it only be Soweto for some reason?
No, we've obviously picked up on Soweto. We monitor across the country. The interesting thing for us is, we're also seeing a bit of an uptick in Mamelodi. We're seeing some of those uptick in some of those townships as well. But it has predominantly been Soweto, which is the one that we've picked up on.
I suppose there could be reasons for that. Its size is one thing. The fact that it's relatively well established, been there for a long time, things like that. All of that could play a factor in why this is happening.
Absolutely. It's a really big area. It's 186,000 properties. So the activity within the area is obviously going to be higher than your normal suburb as we understand it. And it's obviously catering for, people to be there. It's got all the amenities. It's got all the transport, and you don't need to be in the office every single day anymore.
Hayley Evans-Downs, thank you, Head of Digital at Lightstone Property SA. Your first guest this morning, and your mediated conversation around where we are on the property market. You with SAFM, 21 minutes now to 9 the time. Tim Akanusi is the CEO and co-founder of mortgagemarket.co.za. Tim, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. We see people, I think, talking about properties at the moment, in a way, simply because they're worried if their property is keeping its value. What changes are you seeing?
Yeah, Stephen, we are seeing that it's actually a bit of a stagnant market in general. I think there's a wait-and-see approach. Obviously, with elections looming, there are buyers who are eager to get into the market, but they're just sort of sitting on the fence. They're waiting to see how things play out. And I think cumulatively, when they also think about where interest rates are today, they're also waiting for that to start to abate. Although what we know is that it is not likely to abate as long as inflation is still a challenge for the SARB. They will probably keep interest rates higher for longer than we expect, which is unfortunate. But this does create a new market for potential buyers out there who know that there are fewer buyers in the market, and they could take advantage of this and actually purchase property for the purposes of renting them out, because even though first-time home buyers may not be as buoyant as they were, call it 12 to 18 months ago, they need to still rent a place, right? And they're still looking for better places to rent because they are likely to be working from home as well. So there is still the potential for investor buyers to actually go in and purchase property from very desperate sellers who are not getting their asking price. They're probably getting anywhere between 10 and 20% less than their asking price. So it's a very opportunistic market for potential buyers. And I think that sort of activity is what is prevalent, and that will keep the the volume of sales going for some time until things change.
I was going to say, I mean, it doesn't matter what's happening in the market. There's always, because of the way life works, going to be a group of people coming into the market as they get their first, second, third jobs and are able to buy. And there'll be some people who need to sell because they've stopped working or they're retiring or they're just sort of simply moving away from where they used to work. So there's always going to be some movement, and that's what we're seeing now.
Absolutely. Certainly. And I think that is, just the way things will work. There's always going to be winners and losers in this market. Apologies for that phrase, losers, but there will be people who are going to gain more than others, And let's just hope that overall we get through an election cycle that is relatively, call it less eventful, with just the type of dispensation that we're going into, and people can get back to focusing on living their lives and being more focused on purchasing property, which in the long term will serve themselves as well as the rest of the country.
There must be some hotspots. So, I mean, we were talking about Soweto earlier, maybe some parts of Soweto with sort of these hotspots where you can get value. If you can keep that value, it creates a virtuous cycle. Other people come in or decide to stay there and invest in those properties. And you sort of see it in all sorts of places, these little places where clearly something's happening here. It's not necessarily happening in the areas around them, but people end up having more confidence in those particular areas. Are we seeing that kind of thing still moving?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was very supportive of the comments that Haley mentioned around the Soweto area. There's a very popular development there called Orlando Towers Estates, and that just transferred more than 100 units late last year. It's a lifestyle estate in the Orlando area, right next to the towers. It's got Bara Hospital right next to it, Bara Mall literally across the road, with UJ down the road. So new developments like that, tend to bring in more interest in potential buyers not having to move all the way to Fourways or the South or anywhere else where they deem, to be able to purchase lifestyle-related units, right? They could actually do that right in the heart of Soweto because more and more developments are actually being developed with amenities around them, and that bodes well for the development of those areas and obviously leading to better, healthier communities there. So I definitely think that that's the way affordable housing is definitely going to go, and we hope that this trend spills over into Mamelodi, Tembisa, and all the other types of locations that are in desperate need of new developments coming in there to formalize the property sector there. And ultimately, when these houses appreciate in value, that bodes well for the homeowners who can, pay it down or take out a re-advance and take those funds to either start a small business or to have some level of asset-backed, product that they could gear up. So hopefully this is a trend that we see not just in Soweto, but the rest of the country. And I'm very hopeful for that.
In some places and in some parts of the country, people may be very worried that the home they're living in now is losing value. It's a bad time to sell. They want to move, they want to retire, whatever it is. And so they cling on to their property for quite a long time. Is that the right choice? I mean, do they need to wait for the market to turn, or could they actually get themselves into a little bit more trouble because they cling on for too long? And I realize it's quite a difficult question, Tim.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a case of a personal circumstance. If you can afford to keep your existing place and if it meets your needs, then I would say rather not sell because you won't get your asking price in this market. But however, if you can't afford to keep it, if the upkeep of it is a burden, and you potentially stand the risk of this place deteriorating and losing more value, then you probably have no choice but to take a little bit of a haircut and retain as much value as you can, and try to then go into the rental market for a little bit, and then pop back in, when things do improve. So it really is down to your personal circumstance. But what I would say for potential sellers out there, if they are struggling and if their house is bonded, they should approach the banks, who can definitely assist with programs to help them sell their house without the distress factor, help give them some debt forgiveness on maybe outstanding rates and taxes, etc., to try to retain as much value as possible. Banks do have those initiatives, and it'll be up to those buyers to reach out to them to access them.
The situation in the Western Cape, so much sort of middle-class dinner table conversation is around how house prices in Cape Town are going up. Is that still the case?
I think certainly in some sectors, you're finding that for first-time home buyers or in that middle market where people are buying for their primary use, you're seeing more of the popular areas certainly improve their values. However, in the more affluent, high-end sort of holiday homes, investment property, probably not so much, because there's just so much demand out there, and so so much supply rather. So there is a constrained demand that leaves people having to take less for their homes, because there's just an inordinate amount of choice out there for other prospective buyers. So I do think it is sector specific, with the most resilient sector being the first-time home buyer sector. We're talking about homes between 750,000 all the way up to about $1.5 million to 2 million. Those would do typically very well, especially if they're well located and they have all of the call it the amenities and the aspects of estate living or lifestyle living that people are craving today. You'll certainly be getting a good price for those units.
Does that mean that the properties in the same market in Gauteng and maybe KZN are losing value?
Not necessarily. It's just that there's probably less buyers that are showing up to purchase these properties. The Western Cape has experienced a surge since COVID in terms of property prices. That has been driven by this hybrid workplace that we find ourselves in, and people are saying they'd rather live in areas that they, feel meet their personal needs while still being able to address the work needs alongside that. And so the Western Cape then becomes a much more attractive space as opposed to Gauteng, which is more predominantly a very business district. So we're just seeing the demand being placed where people are choosing more of a lifestyle balance than just the need to work.
Thank you very much indeed. Tim Akanusi is the CEO and co-founder of mortgagemarket.co.za. In a moment, Carlo Mariani is the property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. The situation regarding property at this moment, 11 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, good news. The crash on the M1 South has only just been cleared in the last couple of minutes. It happened at 6 o'clock this morning, and here we are, 10 to 9. It's just been cleared. So the backlog from Linwood Road moving through the Rigel should clear, and it should make the traffic on the northbound section flow. Northbound being held up by onlookers. Collision now, Joburg's Mike 1 around Carr Street, so very slow still coming through from Boyson's, and the M2 driving into that Mike 1 northbound queue is queuing back as far as Joe Slovo. Collision coming out of Randburg on the Jan Smuts near Conrad Drive, so some queuing pressure on your way down towards the Hyde Park area. Durban, couple of breakdowns today. been causing some major delays. The N2 South from Queen Nundy Drive, you'll pick up a big queue going into Spaghetti Junction into a breakdown in the roadworks, so you're down an extra lane there this morning. Also in the roadworks north at Gateway, there's a breakdown, so quite heavy from the Kumashu Highway. If you're airport bound, you might want to flick a bit of extra time onto your travels. R56 remains closed between Pietermaritzburg and Thornville. That's due to protesting this morning, burning tyres, and that section of the R56 completely closed. And Cape Town is staying pretty busy around the city centre. There's some very heavy fog and mist around really the sort of central Cape Town environ. So if you come from the outlying areas, it's all clear, and you get into sort of central region, and all of a sudden that mist descends and the visibility gets very poor. So the traffic all being held up because of that. N1 from Belleville to the city centre stays busy. N2 from Langa into Hospital Bend. M3 Constantia right through to Hospital Bend. And the N7 separately is quite a heavy backlog heading north up towards the Bosman's Dam Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
Rainbow, it's not out yet. No. But you've obviously been working. When was the last album?
Yeah, 2019.
It's been a break. Well, COVID happened.
Very long time.
So, putting together this album, the process of it, what was that like? Because a lot of life has been lived.
The world hit pause for me.
Really?
It felt like a couple of years were stolen from me. Like they just went by with no activity. But I didn't have a life because I was recovering from a lot of operations in 2020, 2021. I was trying to figure out who I was in 2022. So it kind of felt like my life hit pause, you know.
Lady Zama has definitely given you something to think about.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
9 minutes to 9, continuing your mediated conversation this morning around our property market. Carlo Mariani is property entrepreneur and founder of The Property Coach. Carlo, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to all your listeners.
How important are the high interest rates we have at the moment to what's happening in our property market? I mean, are they literally dictating what happens?
Well, interest rates dictate what happens in the short term. But I think it's important that we go back to why we buy property, why we invest in property. And it's not about what's going to happen in 2024 or even in 2025. It's really what's going to happen in 2030 and 2035. And so it's really important that we sweat interest rates a little bit less. We sweat a little bit less what's happening tomorrow, and we focus more on the long-term prospects of, values in property in South Africa. And we have a couple of incredibly strong reasons to invest in property or to buy property for the long term. And one is the average age of first-time buyers in South Africa is 36 years old. And, the demographics of the country are such that there's going to be millions of people in the next few years coming to that age where they will likely buy a property. And that's an incredible upswell that is highly likely to increase property prices in the medium to long term. So I think it's important that we recalibrate between short term and medium to long term.
So in other words, we need to think about what we're really doing. And I mean, people have spoken about all sorts of trends recently, but the long-term trends, I suppose, and I'm sure you'll say this, is that property still matters.
It matters a lot, and I think for those like you and I that are not 30 years old anymore, and you go back, you ask people that bought property 10, 15, 20 years ago, do you wish you had bought more? And they're all going to say absolutely yes. So I think it's important in this world that is so driven by short-term gains and short-term opportunities that we look at what is the value of property, not just for ourselves, but for generation as a legacy. When everything else changes, while property has been a non-changing pillar of wealth creation for the great majority of families in South Africa.
So, I mean, that's true, but you can also live in an area where the property was worth X and becomes actually becomes worth a lot less because the area changes. And the old saying goes when it comes to property, location, location, location.
Well, indeed, as my esteemed colleagues shared earlier on, there is no such a thing as a South African property market. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of property markets, and it's important that whether you buy as a first-time home or whether you buy for investment, you really get to focus on what is a good area to buy property in, and economic activity, whether it's formal employment or informal employment, formal economy, informal or informal economy, is the number one driver of property prices and property growth. So, in an economy that is continuing to stumble, the choice of the area to buy in becomes very, very important. Yes, I totally agree with that.
Does the same hold true for investments in your property? And where I'm going with this in particular is there's been so much talk around people moving to Cape Town because services are better. People in Gauteng, some of them are investing in solar power. I suppose some are investing in boreholes as well. Is that a good long-term investment for a property?
Stephen, you mean to invest in solar and water?
Yes.
I think it's definitely a great investment, and if you can afford it, I would certainly get everybody to consider doing that. I think governance and good governance will continue to be a key driver of property prices and appreciation. And so get to understand the area in terms of governance and service delivery. That's very, very important.
You talk about long-term trends, and what the census tells us is that it may be that more people are moving to Cape Town than are actually moving to Johannesburg. And that would suggest then that over the long term, we're seeing a real change in our society. Does it matter where you buy your property? There'll be plenty of small towns in South Africa that were once boom towns for whatever reason, a mine closed, and suddenly the value of those properties disappeared.
Well, I beg to correct you a little bit, Stephen, on this, because the census from Stats SA is telling us that both in terms of quantity and percentages, Gauteng has continued to be the biggest net beneficiary of population growth. That is a definitely fact that Gauteng continues to be, massive inflow of people, and population in Gauteng in 1996 was about 7.5 million people. Now it's close to 15 million people, so it's actually doubled. So I think it's important that we don't just buy in one narrative where, just the Western Cape is the best thing after sliced bread and you should only invest in the Western Cape. There are incredible opportunities in the Western Cape. There are incredible opportunities to invest profitably in Gauteng as well.
Overall, then, we expect elections, we expect differences around interest rates. Could this be the beginning of the end for the buyer's market, and could it start to turn a little bit?
Well, I'm blessed to celebrate 25 years in the country this year. So I think we've seen enough elections, and we've seen that those that continue to wait for things to clarify or for things to be better or for things to, they are net losers. So if you can afford to buy property, if you can afford to maybe even sustain the current increase in the current interest rates, or even an uptick in interest rates, because nobody knows, not even our Governor Kanyako knows what's going to happen to the interest rates, then, keep on waiting can be a very, very dangerous strategy. You might look back a few years down the line and say, I wish I'd bought properties in 2024.
Carlo Moriani, thank you, property entrepreneur, founder of The Property Coach. Really appreciate the time. My thanks also today to Tim Akanusi, the CEO and co-founder of mortgagemarket.co.za, and starting us off, Hayley Evans-Downs is the head of digital at Lightstone Property SA. Well, interesting to see which directions properties are moving in and how things are going. I think a lot of people are still waiting for interest rates this year. Just a reminder of how important all of those things are in the decisions around interest rates at the moment. And we wait to see see what will happen with inflation and food prices as well. Thank you for being with us on this Wednesday morning. We'll be with you again tomorrow. There's a lot going on today, as you know, from Melissa, Mdu, Stanza, Mpo, myself. Look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Top stories at 9. Rubber bullets fired at protesting Mahikeng residents, and Haiti establishes a new transitional council. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. Police have used rubber bullets to disperse a group of people who gathered in Situmo Park in Mahikeng in the northwest. Residents of Mahikeng are expected to embark on a shutdown this morning. Yesterday, the provincial government issued a statement confirming that the organisers of the action did not apply for permission from police. One of the organisers, David Angoma, says the shutdown is in protest of a lack of basic services.
Today's shutdown is one of the greatest shutdown I've ever seen. It's a huge success. The only problem that has happened, the police have been shooting us from this morning with rubber bullets. Actually, they were, according to us, if people are just singing, not even burning tires, and they come like what happened today, we are very disappointed because we don't know, because others it was live rubber bullets. Others we don't know because they were hitting at the top. We don't know whether that is a live ammunition because they did bring us soldiers.
A fire in the Du Toitskloof Pass between Paarl and Worcester in the Boerland is still burning out of control. Joanne Otto, the spokesperson of the Cape Winelands District Municipality's Fire Service, says the blaze is moving up the mountain. She says the local authority and its partners, Cape Nature and the Fire Protection Association, have been on the scene since yesterday afternoon to protect smaller structures. Otto says firefighting efforts will continue today.
The fire, which started opposite the De Kloof Hotel, has continued to burn into the cliffs into the direction of the Huguenot Tunnel. All roads are currently open. However, fire services request that motorists travel with caution, not stop and take photographs, and to please follow the instructions of traffic officials. There are currently 7 firefighting vehicles and crew, 3 ground teams from NCC and Cape Nature.
The animal welfare organisation 4 Paws South Africa is calling on government to end the intensive breeding of lions in the country. 4 Paws is one of the stakeholders that hosted a panel of experts in a dialogue with the IFP in Parliament last night to discuss environmental changes whose solutions the party has included in its election manifesto. Director at 4 Paws, Fiona Miles, says the dialogue focused on the captive breeding of big cats.
We estimate about 12,000 lions in these captive intensive bred lion facilities across South Africa. There's more than 350 of these facilities, and we are calling on government to see an end to the intensive breeding and commercial trade of big cats for their parts and derivatives.
The IFP leader, Vilngosini Hlabisa, has highlighted the importance of the dialogue.
For the longest time, the IFP has been the champion in dealing with the preservation of the wild animals, especially the species that in most cases are found in South Africa or in Africa, because these species promote the foreign people as well as the tourists to come and visit South Africa to see these species, which helps in terms of tourism and injecting money in our country.
And lastly, Haiti's government has named the 9 members of the new transitional council that's due to take over power and organize elections. The council has 7 voting and 2 non-voting members. The BBC's Paddy Maguire has the details.
The official decree announcing the names of the Transitional Ruling Council is one more unsteady step on the path towards restoring order in Haiti. The Caribbean nation descended further into violent chaos in February when rival armed gangs formed an uneasy alliance to block the return of Prime Minister Ariel Henry from an international trip and demanded his resignation. The government has not given a date for the instalment of the council, which still needs to be officially appointed. Mr. Henry, who is in Puerto Rico, has been in power since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse 3 years ago.
Recapping the top story at 9, police have fired rubber bullets to disperse a group of people who gathered in Situmo Park in Mahikeng in the northwest. Residents of Mahikeng are expected to embark on a shutdown this morning. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
Hashtag SFM Talking Point.
Join Smile Foundation for a movie night under the stars featuring Sing 2 on Saturday, 20th of April at Old Ed Sports Grounds. To book, visit smilefoundationsa.org. This is an SABC supported initiative.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that OUTsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Join us on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we ask what makes a good friend with therapist Kim Abrahams. Social worker Tobeka Mbogazi shares how to move on from toxic friendships. And gents, get your buddies and make a delicious bacon and wors pasta. That's Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
There she is, trying to keep up appearances in a bookstore. A bookstore which has become very central to the survival of a number of us who are in hiding. And it's through her and that bookstore that we managed to communicate messages going through her. This was one of the aspects of her role at that particular time. They weren't aware of that. They wanted to take her in and they wanted to intimidate her into giving me away, because they knew that they would find me through her if they could make her talk. She was taken to an interrogation centre outside Durban, and she was then kept in Durban Central Prison. They would take her for interrogations night and day from that prison.
And what happened to her exactly?
She went on hunger strike, and they were actually in a quandary because they didn't know how to handle a white woman who was defying them. They were rather petrified that she would die on their hands, and subsequently brought a psychiatrist in to assess her. She began to feign a mental breakdown, and the psychiatrist happened to be quite a sympathetic human being, and he stressed to the security police that she would die if she wasn't transferred to a hospital. She was on a hunger strike, so she was weakened, she was in a bad state. She was being brutalized, brutally treated by them, beaten, hair pulled, thrown to the ground, all sorts of things. It was easy for her to turn on the tears. In that situation, she made it worse and worse, and they really just couldn't handle it. So they agreed to take her to a mental home.
Asikhathali noma siyaboshwa sizimisele inkululeko. Asikhathali noma siyaboshwa sizimisele inkululeko. Unzima
That there is the former Minister of Intelligence and also Water Affairs, SACP member, anti-apartheid activist Ronnie Casserols. And he was speaking there about the arrest of his late wife Eleanor in 1963. And did you hear the extent that she had to go through just to be able to be discharged from a prison into a mental facility, right? Putting up this show and seemingly being able to convince the hospital authorities that she had in fact was losing her mind, and that was the way out, that she was able to pay for herself. Again, it wasn't just individuals that gave up so much. It's families, wives, children. And for those that were actively involved in the struggle, I think it came at a really, really great cost. So yes, while we talk about just how we have not attained everything that this democracy had promised, while there are so many gaps between what we believe we should be able to access versus where we are, we cannot forget still what a crucial moment it is to be able to mark 30 years of democracy in South Africa. We're listening to The Talking Point. It is still, of course, Freedom Month, and we're going to continue with this with the series. Should I say the series? It's not really a series, but we're going to continue in this breath until the end of the month, really just reflecting on some of the individuals that have contributed to the struggle for freedom, but I think also as South Africans then weighing in, giving our own contribution of what this freedom means to us. You're listening to The Talking Point. I'm Kathy Motlatlana. Coming up on the show today, we are going to be getting into our Citizens Corner and what we're going to be doing, because it's 6 weeks till elections. 6 weeks. In 6 weeks' time, exactly to the day, we will be voting. We will be voting in exactly 6 weeks' time. So, not that much time left. But actually, I wonder, with just 6 weeks away, right? You've seen the manifestos. I know you probably haven't read them, but you know that they exist somewhere on websites, somewhere on links on social media, somewhere exist political party manifestos. But you've heard some of the commitments that the parties are making within campaign trails. Of course, there's also an increase in terms of the profiling of the political party leaders, their representatives. And is there any particular messaging that has really stood out from the political parties that perhaps is resonating with you, and why? Have there been standout moments by any of the candidates and the parties that have caught your eye? Of course, we know now that, kissing babies used to be like the center of elections, right? You just needed that one good picture, and then it will be on the headline of the newspapers, and before you know it, it's a moment that either is said to make or break an election. I don't know if we still live in that era. Kissing babies, doing door-to-door campaigns, that seems to be now generally on the to-do list of political parties and also some of the candidates. But is there anything else that has been offered by way of campaigning that has made you sit up and notice? Has there been any creativity, any innovation in how parties or independent candidates are doing their campaigns that has resonated with you because of how different perhaps it is or unexpected it is? I do think, though, that a lot of people are kind of tired of the kissing babies and door-to-door campaigns. I don't know. That's just me. But I'd love to hear from you. 6 weeks away from the election, your take on the campaigning right now, and what kind of feedback would you give to these parties and independent candidates? So speaking about elections then, in Citizens Corner today, we are going to be speaking with independent candidate Anele Mda. She's somebody that has been involved in politics for a number of years. And of course, she'll be one of those that will be making history as standing and running as an independent candidate in the 2024 national and of course the provincial elections that are taking place. So we are going to be speaking to her about her political journey, but also now that she's standing as an independent candidate, what is she really expecting to be up against? And just the process that she's had to follow, because what we know is that it's been incredibly hard for independent candidates to be able to contest and run in this election. And we'll find out just what of some of the challenges that she has faced are in the second hour of the show. And then the final hour of the show, we're going to be in conversation with the Hlanganisa Community Fund for Social and Gender Justice. So yesterday, they were reflecting on 30 years of this country's freedom and what that has meant for women in particular. So where are we 30 years on? What is the state of women? They've also done a really insightful analysis of the political party manifestos, but taking a look at it, dissecting it through a gender framework and asking the question, well, what are these manifestos saying about issues of gender? Are they gender sensitive? Are they using the right language? What are they committing to when it comes to matters of gender? And it's really an important conversation to have, because in this country, of course, we know that we have a population that's majority women. So the women really could sway the vote in any direction if they were voting as a collective. But yet, you still have politics that's largely run by men, largely where you have men that are representatives, whether it's to the National Assembly, whether it's in political organizations themselves. So there's still a great deal of underrepresentation for women, and their issues, by and large, are peripheral, right? Where is the agenda for progress when it comes to women's issues? Certainly, you don't have political parties that are at the forefront of that, and they've done an analysis of the manifestos, and by and large, I think while there are some manifestos that are better than others in that regard, it does show that there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to making sure that matters of gender are actually mainstreamed in the way that we need to see it. So that's what we'll be talking about in the final hour of the show. It is the open line. It's your national roundtable. I'll be taking your calls. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107.
The Spanish Princess tells the riveting story of Catherine of Aragon, a woman who has an eye on the English throne, and nothing and no one is going to stand in her way. It's a vivid and captivating reclaiming of Catherine's story, which has historically been overshadowed by her infamous marriage to King Henry VIII. Tune in to drama, plots, romance, the twists and turns. Stay for the suspense. Channel your inner royalty with The Spanish Princess. Starts Saturday the 6th of April at 9:30 p.m. only on S3.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at Outsurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from Outsurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Hi guys, your favorite mom vlogger here, talking all things family entertainment with Deal or No Deal now on SABC2 weekdays at 6:30 p.m. Umalume is trying to make it onto the show and have his life changed quick. Amanda Malume. Mama and I are the #1 Mubango fans at 9 p.m. all week because the storylines stay hot. And my two little people can't wait for May when Raid the Cage kicks off with SABC2. See La Familia, keeping those family bonds strong. Until next time.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Nkululeko, you are in Danaza. Good morning. Hi, Nkululeko.
Well, and you?
I'm well, thank you. Nkululeko, where is Danaza?
Danaza in the northern tip of KZN.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Morning.
Are you well, Katie?
I'm well, thank you. What do you want to talk about this morning?
Kathy, I'm asking myself a question since we are in the Freedom Month and we are approaching elections. Kathy, the question I'm asking myself is this the democracy we signed up for as South Africans in 1994? That's 30 years ago. Why am I asking this question, Kathy? It's because, one, the inequality that we're still seeing in South Africa when it comes to land, jobs, academic exclusions, the black or the African society is finding itself very far beyond when it comes to those issues. We are living in rural areas, some of us, and in farms in particular, because we are farm dwellers. That's what we are called, farm dwellers. When we want a piece of land, we are asked the questions, what are you going to do with this land? What. But when other races, I don't mean to be racial, but when other races are asking for a piece of land, they are not asking such a question. Another thing, Kevin, this democracy, political parties from those who were there in the first administration of democracy till today, they have manifestos. How many of those points in their manifestos have been championed and have been implemented? We find ourselves struggling to get clean water, a necessity, clean water. We find ourselves drinking with cows in the rural areas. We find ourselves being without water for months.
So, Nkululeko, so with all of these challenges, right? You as a citizen and also as a voter, what do you see as the tool that's available to you to be able to change that state of affairs for yourself?
I think Kevin, what may be the change? One, we need credible leaders, Kevin, that can advocate for equality, leaders that can advocate for a better society in South Africa. We need leaders that are going to be for the people of South Africa, because the books, when we go to books, it is stated that democratic government is the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But right now, we're seeing things like it is the government by the people for certain individuals, not for the people of South Africa. Some of us are struggling even to go to schools as youth. We are failing to even to go to schools, Kathy, because after matric, life stacks. We don't have money. We don't have resources to further our academic careers. But we are voting. Our leaders, when you speak to leaders, our leaders will give you promises. They don't even care what happens after those promises, because they don't recap what happened, and they don't report back to us. If I may make an example, just last week, we as students of Amajuba, that's why I'm a student today, but I'm paying. We as students of Amajuba were shot at by police. Some of us were arrested because we were questioning the Minister of Higher Education, Innovation and Science and Technology, Mr. Blake Demande. We were questioning him on our NSFAS allowances. We were questioning him about certain issues that are troubling us as students. You know, he doesn't care. Instead, he instructed police to shoot at us, to arrest us. But to come back to your question, Kate, we need credible leaders who have the people in their hearts, not these heartless leaders.
Okay.
We need change in South Africa, and that change must be post the 29th of May.
Okay.
That's why.
Okay, Nguleko, we're going to have to leave it there. I think you've made your point very well so. Nguleko out in Danaza. Situmo, you're in Mafikeng. Good morning.
Morning, Kathy.
Morning.
Yes, there is this saying in Setswana, say, but to give on Kateketana.
Oh, what does that mean?
It means that Mafikeng, people of Mafikeng are they don't have legs to stand on.
Okay.
There is a guy called Tatomolo Sangwe here in Mahikeng. He wants asked the people to shut down the capital city of the Northwest, and people didn't listen. And here there's other guys here urging the people to shut down the capital of the Northwest, but still the people didn't listen. So I want to highlight the issue of the Supra must fall. The capital city was shut down. The people were accusing Supra with the Setsokotane, saying he is corrupt. There is a program called Twintale Roli, similar to the Setsokotane, is going around promising people's jobs. But when the people raise the issue of service deliveries, there is no service delivery. So I want to ask the people of Mafikeng to support those who says the capital city must be shut down for a while. Maybe as the first caller said, one of the credible leaders who will come on the 29th of May will see that the people of Mahikeng really need the services. Only not Mahikeng, Dengakamudiri Molema at large. We must shut down Dengakamudiri Molema at large in order for this village to get services. There is no services.
Situmo, has the shutdown gone ahead? Because some of the reports earlier on in the morning were suggesting that they